Hello and welcome to episode 182 of the Imperial Truth. I'm Greg. Joining me, as always, is Mr. Howard. Hello, Howard.
Hello, Greg. You all right?
Yeah, not too bad. Yourself?
Yeah, pretty good actually. Pretty good. All feeling surprisingly buzzy after a
Excellent
busy few weeks.
stuff. Okay, before we get into that, we have to talk about Element Games, the place to get all your toys, all your sprays, all your board games, all your
Hobby essentials.
hobby essentials. Your airbrushes. What else did they have? There's something else new that they were doing. I couldn't remember. Just whatever you want. If it's to do with hobby gaming or board gaming or card gaming, then
Oh
there's a good
yes, yeah.
chance that Element will have something you want to spend money on. Quite
I think
frankly,
they've got a sale. You say airbrushes. I think they've got a sale on them.
they did have
Cult
one
of
for
Paint
a while.
airbrushes. Yeah, I'm not sure that. I think it's still
They
going.
do have, I think semi-regularly have stuff on sale. Oh,
Hmm.
daylight lamps.
Oh yes.
Yes, so
You've got quite a good one, haven't you?
I've got like I don't know if the one I've got a Lumi.
Hmm.
Mine must be 51 centimeters. I don't. They're saying they're 120, £119.19 down to 113.23. I bought mine a long time ago. It's a fantastic lamp, to be fair.
Actually, it's not a
Ah,
bad idea. I might need to look into those. Yeah. Okay. Hmm.
there's lots of different
Good
ways to do
thought. That one.
lighting,
Yeah.
but the
Hmm.
Lumis are, and Lumi, and there's a Luminos 65
Hmm.
centimeter advanced level lighting solution. But they are brilliant lamps. And then they've got like the twist and go and the portable desk light, which I've seen people use when they're like hotels working away from home, taking
Also,
a bit of hobby with
funny
them.
enough, you should mention that. That's actually quite a good idea because I tend to bring hobby sort of into the living room or whatever, wherever the family are, just so you're not completely secluded all the time. It's quite handy to have a
Yeah, it's
portable
not a bad
solution.
idea actually to get a little one. I'm not
Yeah,
sure whether I can afford it this month.
clipping a sprue or whatever you like. Actually, I could do with a bit of light here. You're just doing that
Yes.
on the table in the corner. At least you're in the same space as people rather than, yeah, I vanish to myself to the hobby room or the bedroom or whatever. So
Yeah, they're
that can
not
be quite
cheap.
a good idea. No,
They
no,
are
no, that's true.
they
Bit of a
are
special
very good.
occasion thing. Hmm.
Yeah, if I can end up with like cards going in next week for a few bits and pieces and just life in general, means I'm not spending much money. But something like that could be really useful, as you say, particularly for cleaning or building models where you don't need to be at the desk quite the same way.
Hmm.
That would be cool. Excellent. So, you've been doing much hobby?
Well, kind of. It was really all focused in on getting stuff ready for the Scouring of Barbarus event that we went to. That was me rushing a solar auxiliary army together, because I wanted to have something broadly compatible with the narrative of the event, and I not having any loyalist marine force that was involved notionally. Then I thought, right, I'm going to give this an opportunity. So yeah, that was my big push, particularly as I realised less than a week before the event that I needed to switch out 3 tanks for 3 different kind of tanks,
Yeah.
and having to build them and paint them to a reasonable standard before that, while continuing usual family duties. That was really all my focus, and now I feel strangely without a target now. Now that that's been and gone, I sort of think, oh, I haven't got a focus now. I can do anything, so I'm going to return to my hobby butterfly ways. But that was really the focus, and I really quite enjoyed it actually, having all that to rush through. Um, I'd imagine yours was probably similar, or
Oh no, I
were you
didn't
doing
enjoy it
some?
at all. Because it's hobby, but yeah, slightly different end results, I would say. Yours were getting commented on at the event. Mine were just about painted. So, but
They were painted though.
there are, yeah,
They were
yeah,
tournament ready. They were
uh,
event ready.
event ready, just about. But they're now on the desk, having like going over doing the second layer on the paints and filling in the
Nice.
details. So, started very slow. Although Russ's sword did break in return transportation,
Oh no!
so I had to. Yeah, so not fun, is it, for a Primark model? So it was
That
hanging on by a
sucks.
thread. By the time I got around to actually trying to fix it, it was like, yeah, it's come off. So it's
Balls.
okay. It's back on. It should. I'm sure it will knock off at some point, but just keep fixing it.
That
Not
sword
buying a
did.
new one.
That sword did such. It clearly did so much work for us
It did.
over the
The axe
weekend.
did no work.
It tired him out.
We will talk about that much later, I feel.
But I've got my
So,
eye on some. I'm kind of fancying changing. I don't know. On the one hand, I want to do some Sons of Horus because I saw an
right.
amazing looking Sons of Horus army at that event, and it's kind of reignited that for me.
Whose was that?
And
Do you
oh
remember?
goodness, I'm going to look up his name because I have it here, and to make sure I get that correct rather than guess. And I will come back to you in a moment. And I also want to do some Legions Imperialis because I put all of that basically any time I was spending doing hobby before the event that wasn't on the Solar Auxilia. I thought this is wasting time. This is a
Sure.
distraction. Put it on hold until after. So now I feel like I've got freedom to go and do things. I want to build some storm hammers. I want to build some drop pods, that
Cool.
sort of stuff, kits that I think are going to be quite fun. So
Nice.
yeah, I'm not yet dived back in to the solo, but it's quite a good point actually. That once you've got it to a certain level for an event, you kind of want to just then finish it off in some way.
Well, I mean, yeah, mine was um, barely at the level, so it definitely needs doing. But also, yeah, just that kind of push on, as it were. And
The Sons of Horus army was by, unfortunately, his name is one that I'm probably going to not do well with,
Butcher,
but Mike Salagagan.
right?
Salagahagan. Salageghem. Yeah, Mike's army looked brilliant. He had a lovely black Spartan with Justarin and
Mm.
a couple of veteran squads and a couple of contemptors. Real classic models, looked brilliant. Yeah, thought they just looked tip top the way he painted them.
So if you're
And
selling it, Mike,
yeah, yeah, tell you, yeah, I'm easily persuaded.
yeah, cool. Uh, I'm trying to as well. I was having a look at the next Heresy event I've got planned, which is in it's Greeting for the Warps, Greetings from the Warp in September, which is 3,000 points. And I was like, I need to check because 1750 of the army is there ready to go. And let's just have a little look. Oh yeah, no, can't take Russ. So actually, I need
Off.
1850 points, which is fine. Is what it is. I wondered. I was pretty sure that wasn't going to be the case. So I'm now looking at, do I take a glaive, even though they're terrible? Do I take a knight, or do I just take a typhon? And then, yeah, I have to boost the rest of it anyway. So we'll see. But I played a game Tuesday actually after the event against Iron Hands and got absolutely butchered. I had some bad luck in a couple of
You did.
turns. Yeah, no, it was worse on Tuesday. Like
Oh
nothing
no,
worked. Nothing worked at all. It was unbelievable, really. But
that was the same force you took.
well, it was 3,000 points. I took some extra
Oh,
bits
okay.
and pieces, but I was a bit too gung ho, and then it was literally charging in, doing 0 wounds all over the place
Uh,
and that kind of thing. And it was like, what? Seriously?
how is
But
this happening?
yeah, it's all fun, isn't it? But it was quite frustrating. But hey, I could have played it differently as well. So it's not all the dice, but it very much was partly the dice.
Well,
Um,
it has to happen sometimes, doesn't
yeah, something like that. So yes. Anyway, so yeah, that's my plan is right. I need to over the next few days, week or so, write a vague list, if not a full list, without too much spending on models in there, and take something to greetings that will be able to have an engaging game with people,
it?
which is
Nice.
always a tricky thing to try and balance, but we shall try. Maybe I can throw some custodian allies in or something actually. that might
Oh
work.
yeah, it sounds like it's quite relaxed if you've got the ability to take things like knights,
Oh no,
albeit
it's
not
a
prime
Lord of
work.
War.
But
It's a Lord of War
yeah,
choice. It's
yeah, that's quite good.
absolutely fine. So, yeah, I need to just go back and double check the pack and have a little look at the armies because they can be a real mix at a greetings event. So we
Nice. It does feel
shall.
like there's a lot of time, but as I
Oh
found with
no,
this
no
event, it
chance.
just disappears, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I think the missus might be taking the boy like away for a couple of nights, and I'm imagining like I'll end up spending those nights just coming home, sitting at my computer, not moving, getting the takeout in, so I don't have to move
Nice.
apart from to the door. But we shall see.
Shape,
Yeah,
shaming yourself to the hobby desk to get it done.
yeah. Well, I need more tanks. Like, I took a whole infantry force here, pretty much. So tanks eat up points quicker than infantry. There is that.
That's true.
But we shall see. I mean, I could just take 2 Spartans and then a load of people running and put some Terminators and Spartans. Get some Vara gear or at least some not Vara gear. Uh, you know, you quickly eat up points when you do that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But we shall see. Anything else before should we just shoot off
I
and
think we go straight into what's been happening.
yeah, okay. Well, just before we do that, we'll take a break in a second. Um, we're gonna talk about Barbarus this event, and then the second section is a little kind of. This is the 10th anniversary episode, which might even come out on the same date as we released the first one because we're that late, which is fine. And we had some feedback or some ideas came in, so we are looking at having kind of a look back at the last 10 years. And we can thank Eamon Duffy for that. So yeah, let's hit a break and let's look at what's been going on. Well, we're back with what's been going on. It's been a weird one. It's been quite quiet the last month and a half, really, for GW as they built up to trying to do whatever they were doing, shutting the warehouse, whatever that was for. But
Yeah. Yeah, there was a. It seemed to describe it as taking stock, but in retail that is a little bit more significant and actually relevant. Yeah, they had a bit of a pause, didn't they? Because there had been all sorts of rumours that it had been causing them issues and stores struggling to get stock of things. So they seemed to decide, well, hold on a second, we're gonna do something, with no indication of what that something was. But they closed the warehouse for, was it a week?
yeah, no, it was over a weekend, I think, two or
Or
three
just a
days.
weekend? Okay.
Yeah, so it could have been stock take. I'm hoping it was, something to rectify the issues they've been having.
Hmm.
It also pretty much coincides with, it does coincide with a pricing update, they call it,
Yes.
which I don't think was terrible. Like, no one wants to see prices go up. Let's face it. But what is it? Most countries, the average change will be between 3 and 5%. But there was paints and White Dwarf, Black Library products didn't go up at all. Bearing in mind how much inflation we've had in the UK over the last year, it's not
Yeah.
surprising.
Price increases are inevitable across the board, and things like construction materials are just eye-watering in what's happened with those. And
Or just
paint, funnily
what's
enough, in general, has gone up painfully.
um, cheap food. Like that's been the
Yeah.
biggest one. Like your
Yeah.
30p, beans or whatever's gone up to 70 odd p, and it's like
Yeah.
I can take a 3 to 5%. Like, don't get me wrong, I don't want it. As I say, I'm not
Would. Yeah.
buying much hobby at the moment at all if I can help it, because got a 2-year-old for starters, who eats all our money. But yeah, it is what it is. I think
Apparently, some
there's,
things. I was talking to our local store owner, and he said that certain things, obviously, there's quite the variance across there, which that article didn't across the therefore obviously very wide and full range. So apparently, the old world went up. The old world products went up quite a lot, quite a bit more than that seemed to suggest. I don't have
that's a
those
good
figures
point.
in front of me, but I think certain things went up quite a bit more, and then quite a lot went up a lot less. So the average was what they were
Yeah,
reporting. But I think certain things were the one that stood out to me, which surprised me, was the old world because a lot of it was relatively recently released. So it
do
was a bit
you
of a
wonder
surprise to hear that was going up.
if that they knew it was coming and had that initial like get it out cheap? So you still 40 quid for 10 knights errant, which isn't too
Right?
bad. 52 quid for because they do basically double unit size, don't they? So
Yeah, yeah,
1224 men at arms is 52 quid. Four free Pegasus is 40 quid. Yeah, I mean it's not cheap, but it's not. Knights of the Realm one for 52.50 for 20 of them. That's gone up a little bit. I think it's a
yeah.
decent
I thought some
jump.
of those products had gone up a jump like 10% or that sort of order of magnitude, but which is obviously a little bit more than some of those other products and things. But yeah, good to hear that paint hasn't gone up. It sounds minor, but I mean it's such a staple. It's the sort of thing you'll pick it up every now and again. And they're with other product ranges champing at the bit there or competing with them. It's quite good that they're not sitting as the most expensive paint on the market, which I don't think they are. But
I mean, it's not cheap, is it,
it's not
compared to
certainly not the cheapest either.
some? But yeah, hey,
But yeah,
it
okay,
is.
that happened. What
Yeah, I mean,
what
it
do you,
is.
I mean? I've got my own idea on this, but what you say? Oh, they closed the warehouse to hopefully address some of the problems they were having. What are the problems they were having?
So I don't know specifics, but all I know, I was told there were issues around the software computer system they'd put in.
Right. Okay.
That basically they'd saved money on
What
that.
what was that? What was that resulting in though? What was the impact to customers?
Um,
Just harder to get products is what I thought it was.
yeah, just issues that delayed
Yeah, there
the
you
whole
go. Okay.
system, slowed the whole system down. Again, pinch of salt. I've heard it from someone I trust, but it was vague.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know. No, I'm sure. Well, I'm sure some people do know exactly what was going on, but it was obvious there was an issue, and I mean, we'll talk a little bit later. But they've launched what, one, two, three, four resin figures, Command Squad, uh, loads of Legions Imperialis, and
Yeah.
relaunched the Knights, some Knights, some Titans, Aeronautica Imperialis stuff, buildings. Like, it's not a small release for next week.
No.
So they look, I mean, it's not huge, don't get me wrong, but it's not 2 units and, a Necromunda thing like like we have had recently. Yeah. So
And we are on the verge of a major system release
yeah,
related
and
to
I'm
Wrath.
sure that's been, won't be the levels of 40k, but they'll have to make sure they're ready for that, and probably for all the spearhead boxes that they're hoping they'll sell
And 40k has
along with
been
it.
40k has been rattling along at a pace as well.
I
You
mean,
know,
yeah.
every
So,
few weeks we're getting two codexes coming out, and battle forces are coming out with them, and other products, and the renewed interest you probably get over ranges. So yeah, it continues to be moving forward at a fair old lick, doesn't it? All of their releases, but it
yeah,
was
I mean, yeah. There's
quite
been a
good to see a
definite.
bit of a pause.
There were a few weeks where there was very little, or it was one thing coming out recently. But
Yeah.
if you're having issues, or I mean, even if you stop taking that, that might be a
Mm.
way of handling that, making sure there's not a flow of stock that you're having to try and keep count of while it's going out. But yeah, it appears to be a positive move with what they've announced going out. So we can only hope that they've resolved that, and we can start to see better stock
Mm.
levels across the website. Because if you want to buy a basic 40k Land Raider, They've been out for a long time. So
They have, yeah.
hey, yeah, and as I say, there might be a lot of people picking up spearheads for Age of Sigmar coming up. But anyway, so and we've seen all these models, so there's nothing new. Although having the Legiones Astartes battle group and the Solar Auxilia battle groups are a very good thing for Legions Imperialis to be able to just get all that in one go. Bosh.
Yeah. It does fit. It's huge actually. Where they followed a pattern over the last few releases. This is a bit more of a here's everything, and
Yeah,
I
here's
think
an
they're now
army.
fully caught up, aren't they?
Are they? Yeah, because we got was it the Russes we were waiting on?
Russes and Predators were the
Yeah, that
last
was the
things from
last.
the original
Yep,
release that you can now get outside of the starter set. I think we're also caught up with the old stuff from Aeronautica and Titanicus. I think you can now buy
pretty much everything.
all of that again, which is good. In one form or
Awesome.
another, Xiphons I know are super popular and were
Sure.
impossible to get a hold of. So that's quite cool to see. And as you say, those battle group boxes were an unexpected surprise and a good one.
It's one. It's one of those frustrating things where you're like, oh, that would have been good 6 months
Yeah,
ago.
yeah.
When people were looking to get into the game and didn't quite know what to buy.
It's
I'll
quite a
pick.
substantial saving. It's 5 boxes worth of
We haven't got a price, have we?
units. Yeah, they've been circulating
I,
today.
I, I mean,
Officially, no. But well, I say that
well,
as
no.
stores
I
are
think it's so.
stores are pushing it forward. Yeah.
I think they get that information from there's a like a part of GW's website for suppliers,
For trade orders, yes. And
traders. So I think they go
the
into that to pull those lists.
that's right. And this was a newsletter from a store
Right.
circulating. It wasn't a hey, I'm on a forum and I'm circulating this list that I got from a friend. It was
Yeah.
I'm a store. If you would like to pre-order these products, let me know now because this is the price.
Sure.
And the battle group box was £110 GW price,
Okay. Cool.
and that's 5 boxes at the new price. They're 31.50 each. So you're kind of getting a set and a
160
half.
quid's worth.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're getting a set and a half
That's good.
for extra, if you like.
It's sort of smacks of them releasing the Reaver 6 months after, or 4 or 5 months after Adeptus Titanicus came out.
Yeah,
And you're like, oh, okay, fair enough. We'll work hard to get those
particularly
people who are interested back in. But
particularly as it goes so well with the starter box.
yeah,
If you got one of these alongside a starter box, particularly like the Marine one, you've almost instantly got a pretty good army now. I think people are
chunk.
suddenly pricing them up. They're like 1,200, 1,300 points in those battle
Cool.
group boxes, which you're getting you kind of need, in the case of the Marines, you kind of need an extra infantry box.
Sure,
The
yeah.
other stuff is all kind of cool. So you're getting infantry and you get all the other stuff, which is just kind of cool to have anyway. And like 10 rhinos, always really useful. The
Mm,
Kratos, the fast attack stuff, the specialist dreadnoughts, all very good to have and all very useful. And it suddenly makes you mean you've probably got what, a 2,000 point army straight away out the box.
yeah.
And you're like, that's if you combine it with a starter set, probably more if you can include Titan. Pretty good. I can kind of see why they were holding on, particularly as if they were drip feeding the other releases, and someone was saying, "Well, I don't know, is it?" Because if you said the only way to get, say, the fast attack stuff was in this box until they release it separately later down the line, well, that's kind of what they do with characters and stuff in battle groups,
Yeah.
in other systems. So yeah, maybe this is something that would have been. Would this have been helpful later on, or is it
Yeah.
better to let it all go and then discount it later? I don't know.
I think, well, I think for generating buzz and getting players to buy in, the ability for some people to go, oh, I don't really want Solar Auxilia, I'll buy the book and I'll buy this.
Mm,
I've got templates and I've got whatever. I can make my own tokens. But yeah, I'll buy the book. I'll buy 2 of these. I've got a good grounding for a Space Marine 4.
mm.
But hey, it is what it is. And hopefully it will kick back up again. I mean, there was the unfortunate thing this weekend of Greetings from the Warp, actually their specialist weekender, where there were dropouts for the Legions Imperialis, and only one Legions Imperialis player ended up being at the event. I
Oh, that
think
sucks.
I think they ended up having a full weekend of games because
Yeah.
organisers played and what have you. I don't think it's representative of the game as a whole.
No.
I think it might be patchy in different places, but also I think a fair few of people who are playing Legions, because of where it is as a game, how new it is as a game system as well,
Mm.
either aren't ready or are also playing other games. So on a weekend like that, they might be playing Old World instead, or something like that. So
Yeah.
kind of it's like just a bad look. But
Yeah.
as I say, I don't think it's representative of the state of the game. I hope
No.
not.
And when you hear all the feedback I'm hearing from events, people have been overwhelmingly positive about it. And not only the game itself, which they've enjoyed, they speak very highly of the quality and the enjoyment of the people they're playing with, which I think is a lot to be said for that. Is
Well, that's the most important
three
thing. You can
events.
have the
Well,
best game
exactly.
in the world, but if people aren't enjoying playing it,
Yeah.
it won't
If
do
you're
anything.
playing it in a rough community or whatever, what community
Yeah,
you're not feeling a part of, then that rather is a bit of a downside. Yeah, I've heard
indeed.
overwhelmingly positive things about that, which has made me really keen to get that
Cool.
on the table.
Right. Well, moving on, we had a reveal. We had I can't remember which event it was.
It was, I want to say it was
GW's
the Dallas Open, but I
Dallas
could be wrong.
Open, yep, something like that, where they showed us some Age of Sigmar stuff, and then a couple of days later showed us a Mechanicum Battle Group box in
Yeah,
glorious plastic.
glorious Technoplastic. Yeah,
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 the
quite a cool. Yeah, it is a cool looking thing. I mean, when you it was all the teasers were for Mechanicum, but it was really cool to see this. It's a big old box of stuff.
I will be. Yeah, it looks like I'll be recollecting Mechanicum at some point. What do you get in there? You get a unit of thralls, you get a unit of 6 Thalax, or 2 units of Thalax, 2 Castellax Battle Automata, and the oh, my mind's gone blank.
Triaris.
Triorus, that's the one. To carry some stuff around in. So a good basic start of an army. The Thalax have they've been living a good life in their turn from resin to plastic.
They
The
have
slightly
they've
beefier
chunkied up,
models.
haven't they? Yeah.
I kind of don't mind.
Oh, not
I
at
don't have
all.
a
I
problem
think
with
it
that at
suits them
all.
at all. Yeah, and I don't think I would imagine looking at them next to each other, they're going to work perfectly well next to each other. And you've got some cool options for alternative helmets, which are entirely
Yeah,
sympathetic to the rest of the design, which I think is cool as
yeah.
well.
And hopefully you're going to get because also with Thalax you used to have to buy three, and you, I don't know. I mean, I haven't bought any in years, but it used to be, I can buy 3 Thalax, or I can buy 3 Thalax and one has a photon thruster, or I can buy three
Yeah,
Thalax and one has a multi melter. And here you can just buy a box. At some point I'm sure a box of Thalax with probably one of each option, which will be
yeah.
lovely.
I would assume it's going to be rather than
Because it's only
three
one gun
Thalax in
out of
box.
three that can
Yeah,
change, and it's only
yeah. So
three
I'd imagine that will be
three
supported by
options.
it.
So
You're not going to get 3 photon thrusters, 3 plasma things in there,
no,
and 3 lightning
no,
guns. You're going to get 3 lightning guns and then one option of all the other specials.
exactly.
I would
So
assume, anyway, we did without seeing the sprues. The Thralls have had a bit of a shake up as
oh,
well.
you
They
say
were,
thralls, do you? You're one of
or
them.
should I be saying,
Who knows? Who knows?
Thralls? Is that the old
Thralls.
Thralls?
To be honest, I
Interesting.
think they're probably both acceptable. But I was just curious. It's fine.
Never.
Yeah.
It occurred to me that it would have alternatives, but yeah, them, those shambling guys, servitors that aren't really servitors. Them. The zombie guys. They've been it's quite a characterful upgrade for them. I thought, or
Well,
reworking of the model.
I have just gone to Cambridge English Dictionary,
Oh, here we go.
and both English and US is thrall or thrall, depending. Yeah, it's the US version, obviously. Thrall. It was funny. So yeah,
Mm.
almost like it's got a W in there. But anyway,
Mm.
kind of irrelevant. Yeah, they're kind of cool. At one point, the Ad Secularis, when or back in first edition, not long after they released. I think they were. Was it £3? They were one of, if not the most expensive per point.
Yes.
You could get. I think it was £3.50 a point or something.
Oof.
It was. It might not have been that
That's
much, but
pretty
it was.
intense. Yeah.
You were buying like a 50-point unit, base, and it was not cheap. And it was like, yeah, I'm not using those. No one's using those.
No.
Everyone's using plastic mechanicum stuff from 30k, from 40k,
Yeah.
because it makes sense. But yeah, these work, don't they?
Yeah. I'm surprised to see them in that first. Well, am I surprised? I don't know. Because it's a unit I'm not used to seeing really very much, even though they were apparently quite effective. I was quite surprised to see them here, but cool. Glad to see them. They're going to
Well, I
open up
mean,
options, I think.
they're a troops choice. Like, what
Mm,
else do you put in, like, to
yeah.
bulk it out? Because the problem with mechanicum is you can very quickly spend points if you put another 6 Thalax in there, or if you put
Yeah.
some Ursarax or some Silax or some, you'd only fit 2 Vorax in maximum. Like,
Mm,
you've got a very small box. You put these guys in, and it helps fill that out, makes it. Because at the end of the day, you say you get a lot in there. You, how many models do you get? Like 40.
yeah.
When you break it down like
Yeah.
that, it doesn't quite work that way, but
No. And
it
if you
helps
compare
it
it,
look like you're getting your money's worth.
the Solar Auxilia box looks even better next to this somehow.
Mm,
When you can put the two together, even though they are almost directly comparable, I'm sure there's something. I mean, you get the 2 tanks and a walker and 25
yeah.
guys. You're like, oh yeah, okay. Depends what you
I mean
what you're
the
into.
the Krios is big. It's Krios.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Yeah,
The thingy is big.
Triaris thing. Yeah,
Iris is a big tank. They're lovely tanks actually. Haven't really looked at their rules to be honest, but
that looks
they've
like
still
something
got
that's really going to benefit from being in plastic as well.
it was a chunk of resin. I mean,
Yeah,
the only good thing about it was chunks of resin, so
yeah.
it wasn't
Wasn't going
too
to warp
fiddly. But
too substantially. Yeah,
yeah, but I mean, just anything in plastic's better than resin, right? It's like,
100%.
I
Well,
mean, there are people who
well,
will fundamentally disagree with that, and they can be wrong. That's all right. Um,
I built a Land Raider. It was a new Proteus Land Raider. I built
yeah,
it in 2 evenings of where I could just grab a bit of time and pick it up, and one very short period before going to work, just to finish off a few bits. Doing a Proteus Land Raider in resin took me a full weekend with like really dedicating
sure.
hours to it, and it felt like it was me at the sort of pushing my modelling skills, having done it for 20 years or whatever it is. I've been 30 years that I've been doing these things. The plastic, it's a joy, and you can pick it up and put it
Put
together.
it
So
down.
it
Yeah,
says it all, doesn't
I
it?
do wonder. So I actually hate putting together hip joints on dreadnoughts and Thalax and Castellax. Basically, any robot of the
Yeah, yeah,
Mechanicum is exactly the same. So my first one will always end up leaning backwards too much because I get it wrong. I do wonder how much movement there is in there. It doesn't bother me either way, to be honest.
no.
I wouldn't be surprised if there's a little bit like the dreadnoughts where they have a locator plug
Which you
to
can
make them
clip
fit
off.
one way.
Yeah,
Um,
I'd love to see the Castellax in particular looking a bit more dynamic. You tended not to see that in the resin because very expensive. You didn't want to mess around with those too much, and there's only so much you could do. Whereas I really like the idea of people going to town with some slightly more aggressive Phalanx and Castellax in particular. I mean, reaching
definitely
forward with those claws is going to look amazing.
definitely the other thing that's the other thing that plastic allows.
Yeah,
It comes with 2 new Mechanicum constructs transfer sheets. It's cool. So
yeah,
that's
yeah.
really
Those
good.
do make a difference, don't they? Actually?
Yeah, and then also they revealed the Thanatar, the Thanatar
Yes.
siege engine, uh, Thanatar Kavas it's now called, which is the whole reason I had a Mechanicum army was this beast that was revealed at the second, third weekender,
Yeah,
um, because it's just fantabulous. Um,
it is cool. It
uh,
continues to be an absolute beast, doesn't it?
yeah, and it looks amazing.
And they've somewhat enhanced it from the interview that they did when they revealed it, where they've gone, well, there's only so much we could do in resin with it. There's certain things you could do in resin, there's certain things you couldn't do, and vice versa with plastic. What this has allowed them to do is include an option which would have made it too expensive or prohibitively expensive in resin. Added extra cost was needless in resin, but with plastic, they had space on the frame, so they could include the plasma mortar kind of opening up to
You
fire.
kind
That's
of,
pretty cool.
yeah. People did do it with the resin one,
Yeah,
but I mean, and particularly right when you're gluing plastic into these things, it's so much easier than gluing resin into these things. It's that
absolutely.
much more stable as a joint. But yeah, that's fantastic. And then and Archmagus Prime as well. So
Yeah,
because there are again, and most of your HQ you took for the Mechanicum range and played around with them, apart from the guy and the Abeyant. It'd be really interesting to see an alternative Abeyant, like whether they stick with the design of the one they have, if they do one in plastic.
is that
But
make Archmagos Prime plastic?
this one, a good question.
Because I'm now reading the article again, and it
Doesn't
doesn't
say
say.
it, but
And
I
I
think
wouldn't
it
like
will
to
be.
say either way. That
No,
finger would suggest it's plastic.
yeah, I think it's plastic.
Mm. I hope it is.
Yeah, I think so. I think
Could go either way. Those cables don't. Could be either resin or plastic. Don't know. Don't know.
yeah. Who knows?
Yeah. Well,
But
hopefully we'll start to hear some stuff about them shortly.
well, yeah,
Mechanicum in
because
general.
when was this article? This was
18th
18th
of
of
May.
May. So
Mm.
over the next couple of months, I'm sure that'll be out. The
Mm.
other thing that we got shown on the same preview day or event was Legions Imperialis, the devastation of Talon.
Yeah. Looking forward to this one. This is looking really good.
Yeah, for sure. So a 40-page section on lore documents the transformation of Talon at the hands of the invading Iron Warriors force, the battle for Sapphire City, and explanations of the Legion's approach to armored warfare. Talon, of course, being famous for its 1 million tanks and all that. Hopefully, some
I think it might have been
environmental
10
stuff.
million, but yeah, it was a lot.
Oh, sorry, 10 million. Yeah. Um, what we got? So, provide a framework for a Northern Desolation campaign, recreating the pitched battles between the forces of the Sightless Warren and the Rekhab Fortress. New mechanism for Fog of War, which is cool.
Yeah, it does look like they've got quite a lot of campaign type stuff and mission variations, which is cool.
Yeah. What have we got here? Battle honors for veteran detachments. All formations of legend represent lore-accurate forces. Solar Auxilia, Legion of Astartes, Subterranean Assault, Solar Auxilia Titan Hunter Company. Very cool. Yeah. And new Solar Auxilia Super Heavy Tanks and Termite Assault Drills and more. Saber Strike Tanks, Arcus. The Sabres look so diddy. Bless them.
Yeah, little squadrons of those are going to look awesome.
Yeah,
Without a doubt.
absolutely, for sure. We got new Rust variants, exterminators, yeah, annihilators, demolisher cannons. Cool. It'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. But I'm looking
Because it'd
forward
be
to that
interesting to
one.
see, because what we haven't seen is whirlwinds and
Yeah.
vindicators, I suppose. Vindicators in both flavors. So there's still armored units, quite a few of them, in the marine arsenal that we haven't seen yet.
Oh yeah.
So it'd be interesting to see if that
Arquiters.
also features in this. Yeah, good point. Artillery, yeah,
Yeah.
for marines, typhons and that sort of thing with various Spartan chassis
Yeah. Plenty of stuff. And
things.
and again, all feeds into that like bigger guns thing where currently Titans are perceived to be a bit too powerful. Buildings perceived to be game defining, which probably all shifts a little bit once you get some really big weaponry or some powerful
Yeah,
weaponry on the table. So it's what the game needs. So yeah,
Yeah,
again
looking
over
forward
the
to that.
next.
Plus, I'm really looking forward to reading about Talon.
Oh,
I used
absolutely.
just building the solar stuff made me re-listen to John French's Talon books because I hadn't listened to them for a while. I was a fan of them the first time around, and it's one of the relatively rare examples of humans in being featuring as the sort of main protagonists in the Heresy, which was in Heresy stories. So that was fun listening to those and made me think. It reminded me about Talon. Now that was setting up. So reading that about in detail in a sort of source book, I think is going to be really good. It's not an
Yeah,
area they've
true.
focused on. So.
Yeah, Talon had essentially one book's worth of stuff over a few novellas and a bit of audio. So yeah, and the story is what the story is, and it's semi-contained, but there's lots of stories that can be told, which is
Yeah,
cool.
and having the source book treatment, I think, will be great.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's one final non-heresy but heresy thing, which is Necromunda got some gun emplacements, sentry
Oh
guns,
yes, they were
which
quite
will be
cool, weren't
perfect
they?
for having as your choices for your tarantulas.
They came out after the preview, didn't they?
They did much later, yeah, 27th of May. So they'll probably be with us fairly soon. But yeah, if you're inclined to look at having some tarantulas, these could do a job for you. They
Yeah,
look pretty
Necromunda's
cool.
always one to watch because there was also a load of terrain, ruined Zone Mortalis terrain that was
Just
announced
announced,
today.
yeah.
So that also could be very useful. There's a lot in the Necromunda range to keep an eye on. Very
If you're
cool
doing a
little.
militia army,
Yeah,
there's
for
like
sure.
for units as well as utilizing some of the vehicles, things like that. Yeah, there's certainly it's a very cool line of stuff. Yeah, that terrain is pretty awesome. Let me have a little look. I just brought it up here. Obviously, you've already got all the terrain that you can mix in with for Necromunda, so you can just go straight in and you can have some crazy awesome looking boards if you want to go that way. So yeah, I think that's been about. Oh no, there were a few little other bits. Joy Toy are continuing with their heresy
Yeah,
line of large, like I don't know what you would call them, figurines, movable
it's tempted to call them action figures, but they're not
action
really, are
figures.
they?
They're
Articulated figures.
yeah, that are slightly, they're not cheap. But we do now have Russ, and I am tempted. I think I can't remember. I don't know if he's actually for sale yet, or if he was just announced. Oh,
I
here we
think it's
go.
announced, isn't it? But I could be wrong.
Yeah, I was actually quite. I think the Varagear look really good when they're all like bundled together.
Mm, mm.
I think they're 41 quid, 41 US dollars on this site. Don't know on joytoyfigure.com. Whether how that translate to over here prices, I don't know. But you got Deathsworn, Geiger Fellhand, Contemptor. Russ is 126 US dollars on this site as a pre-order.
I mean, given the
So yeah,
size of it, that's not
it's not cheap.
it's not cheap, but it's not insane either.
No, I've got as I say, I've got Ragnar Blackmane because I think he's cool. Uh, you do get a lot of options with them, which is pretty awesome. They're not for everyone, but there's something about it. So different parts. You get Lehman Russ, you get the power pack separately, the axe of Hellwinter, Molinar, the sword of Bale Knight, Scorn Spear is his gun, shield, axe, and knife, a replacement head, 2 pairs of hands, and a base, which is cool because you don't get a base on the other ones. So they've got him in this one. They've got him pictured with like how he is running as a model, and then he can hold the sword in 2 hands, or he can have the knife out and a bare hand, or the axe in two hands. It's like they're quite cool. They're quite well done.
Mm.
So
Those models always surprise me how impressive they are.
yeah, yeah, it's quite something. But yeah, I was like, cool, okay, right. I'll maybe I'll ask for him for Christmas or something like that. And then
Yeah.
I look at the like some of the variegated together, and I'm like, actually, they look funky as well. No, this is not something I'm going to be doing. I'm not. It's not that much of a temptation. I think they're cool. I don't want lots of them. I want
Yeah.
the odd one that really takes my fancy.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Um, but
I
I
could
mean,
see you eventually having Rust there. I mean, it's kind of an obvious one to have the whole collection. It's gonna like
oh, no,
that could be quite a big set of stuff, and it
yeah,
takes up a lot of space and things. So, like, if it's cool, if you're into um, the large scale figures, that's a whole other collecting
yeah,
hobby in many ways. But we have a lot of space taking up stuff as it is. It's not
yeah.
one
It's
that
space
rushes for me. Mm,
and a lot of money, and they
mm,
do at the end of the day just stand there, which is
mm.
fine. It's cool. Don't get me wrong. I like collecting things, but um, yeah, I only need the odd one to keep me happy. But I think that's probably it for kind of news. If you are going to Tacoma for the US Open, you can. Andy Wardle is out there doing an official hobby
Oh yes.
seminar, Academy of Paint, which is pretty cool. They've had quite a few very good painters doing these now.
Mm.
Um, so that's pretty awesome. I like that. But heard the new location for Adepticon been announced last time we talked?
No, I don't think it has. I think that's a new thing.
Yeah. So I was talking to one of the Heresy guys actually, and there's two groups that run Heresy at Adepticon. And I think they're pretty excited by the venue and what they might be able to do, and they're looking at like kind of going a bit bigger than they have before. I think they've got some cool ideas. My only problem is it looks like it's at least one night extra to make
Yeah, you
transfers
mentioned this.
because
Mm,
basically, I mean, if I leave, so the Sunday at Adepticon's become less of a day than it used to be anyway. But if you want to hang around and watch Golden Demon get given out, then you're probably pushing it to get on a plane in
mm,
time at Chicago, because even though it's only a couple of hours, you know something holds you up, like you miss your flight, so it's
yeah.
probably not worth doing. So I then have to decide: do I abandon, like, if I'm going over with their mates who are probably doing that? Do I just leave them there? Um, I'd rather I'd rather come home slightly earlier on that Sunday and go out earlier, so I don't miss, if there's any delays, I don't miss the event, any of the event.
Mm.
So I'd rather go out on the Tuesday and come back on the Sunday night than risk going out on the Wednesday and coming back Monday.
Yeah, the stress of cutting it all too fine is grim.
Yeah, and it means that I could go out on the Tuesday, make my own way up, going to Chicago and get the train up maybe, or get a flight from Chicago. Although it's one of those things, like most of the time, it'll probably be fine to leave a little bit of time. But I've heard horror stories of people, having to run. You've had issues at O'Hare, haven't you? Was it
I
you?
haven't.
Was
No,
it someone else? No,
no, I
someone else
haven't.
I was talking to who said they basically had plenty of time, and then US Customs happened,
Yeah,
and they all that time disappeared. Um, so
yeah,
yeah, stress you don't want, particularly at the start of a weekend like that.
no,
And then if I do that, then I get into Wisconsin, um, into Milwaukee, like early afternoon, mid afternoon. I can wander around a little bit, and then I could have Wednesday morning to have a little look round. I don't really know. I think there's a lot of restaurants and stuff set up for the event. but to have a little explore could work out. But I think it's going to be more expensive an event, so I've also got to try and find the money to do it. So,
yeah, it's not cheap, is it?
no, so yeah, if anyone wants to buy some Sylvaneth,
There's a
what
man
else
with an
can I
army
do?
over here.
Yeah, I got a few bits still to sell, but you can only keep selling stuff for so long. So yeah, I might have to do a GoFundMe or something.
GoFundMe to
And going on
to
holiday,
Adepticon.
thank you. I mean, I wouldn't be the first podcaster to do that. Yeah, I'm sure it'll be alright. Okay, let's leave that then. Let's come back and talk about Barbarus.
Oh yes.
Right, well, Barbarus. So,
We've been talking
the
about this bit, haven't we? We've been talking about this in the build-up.
yeah, the Scouring of Barbarus. Howard came down to leafy East Sussex and
Very
stayed in a
kindly invited into Shay Greg.
yep, and James kindly left him his bed, which Howard had to climb in, but it all worked out. And we headed down to the lovely village of East Dean on the Sussex coast to play this 4-game narrative event? Question mark. We'll leave that there for a second. This was an event based on the White Dwarf Articles campaign for the build up to Siege of Terror, which covered what was going on elsewhere. Why weren't certain legions at Terror? Well, mainly because they were blowing up traitor worlds and causing pain. So the scenarios were all featured in a couple of White Dwarfs. Can't remember the numbers, but you can go and
Oh
find
goodness,
them.
no. But it was to coincide roughly with the launch of second edition
Yeah,
Age of Darkness, I think, and it's the only time they've really covered in some detail what happened to Barbarus.
yeah. So the idea being, and this is from the pack, like Lionel Johnson is taking out vengeance on the traitorous hordes as he was doing, trying to distract them, while the Blood Angels made their way, and got to Terra. So this is about Kamos, Cathonia, Olympia, and Barbarus. We have Russ, kind of semi-recovered, and these battered walls, lending a helping hand, and the remnants of the Raven Guard as well, looking for a bit of vengeance. Barbarus being one of the major plot lines here of the Siege of Barbarus. Doubles, which make sure people are clear of that. We had rules around sort of what you could bring. Some convoluted rules about the Warlord, which seem to be played different across the whole event by different people. We could combine.
Different understandings, weren't they?
Yeah, Lord of War points were combined, so you could take a Lord of War as if it was a 3,500 point army, but that could all be one person's. So I did take Russ and alliances, reactions, blah blah blah. But basically, the forces were limited, weren't they? In theory,
It was sort of suggested, wasn't it? It was suggested that you take forces that were thematic to this. So in the
historically,
case,
there,
yeah, exactly. So you had obviously the Dark Angels being significant in this. On the Loyalist side, you had the Dark Angels, the Space Wolves, and the Raven Guard. And on the Traitors side, it was obviously Death Guard, Sons of Horus, I think, and Dark Mechanicum were suggested as those that would sort of play into this.
I think the biggest thing
However,
was, yeah, Custodian Sisters, Silence, Assassins, and Night Houses may not be taken at this event. Armageddons are only available to Mechanican players, not as allied detachment or forces. And yeah, you were encouraged, as we say, to take those legions that were there. But if you didn't, there was no enforcement or anything. There was no negative trait for doing that.
yeah.
The only special characters allowed were Lionel Johnson, Lehman Russ, and Demon special characters. Yeah, which uh, how do you feel about trying to encourage people to bring certain armies?
Um, hmm, Tricky. I like that. I don't think it should be. It depends on how strict an event one wants to run. If you want to really go for it, I think you're going to limit the numbers. If you say this event needs to be this, and I will only allow this in at this event, please submit your lists, etc., ahead of time, or confirm to me what forces you're going to take. This was a much more relaxed affair, and that was made clear. I think in this, it's made clear that this is going to be a relaxed event. I had assumed from reading this pack that it was heavily encouraged that you take those forces I mentioned. That didn't seem to be the case. Actually, it wasn't a big deal. There was a pretty enormous variety of factions at play. So I was slightly surprised to see that variety because I went and made a force specifically because of the ones all the loyalist armies I have or had the starter of at least. I thought, oh great, I can finish off my Imperial Fists or I'll finish off Blood Angels to take for this. Oh no, I won't do that, which would have been an easier task because that doesn't fit the narrative of this. To then
Yeah,
see those very forces there, I was like, oh, okay, I could have done that. And you said to me, you could take whatever you like. It doesn't matter.
yeah.
And I thought,
I
no,
mean, it's not
actually, I'd like
enforced
to
at
do
the
it
end
this
of
way.
the day.
No, it's not enforced. So I was like, okay, I could do that, but I'm not. So there was a moment of, oh, okay, I could have done that, but I didn't care. I didn't feel cheesed off at all about
It's
any of that.
it is a tricky one, as you say. Like the more restrictions you put on the smaller a net you
Yeah,
cast. However, uh, unless you write specifics, as in you cannot bring or you must bring, then you can't expect people to follow it. Like it would be nice, like if everyone kind of went, "Oh yeah, cool, okay," but the one thing I think you learn from running any event is unless it's explicit, and even then, sometimes people will still go against it. But if you don't want something to happen, you have to explicitly say it's not
yeah,
happening.
yeah.
So, um, and I don't know. Again, it is what it is. But I think if you're selling the pack seems to sell, although it says relaxed gaming, this is a specific point event in the Heresy. Part of me thinks if you're going to run this and not worry too much, then run it as an alternative. I mean, I think almost every single narrative Heresy event is an alternative one because it can't be
Yeah,
exact. So just go with it and say, in this side section of this dimension of the Heresy, you know, crack on. Um, and and the other thing as well, actually, is again 100 Imperial Fists who were still trying to make their way back to Terra because they were nowhere near Terra because they were on some backwater town defending it.
yeah,
Who got held up in the warp in the Calth. They were on their way back when Calth happened and got set adrift and have spent 4 years trying to work out where to go, what to do. It matters very little to the Imperial Fist Legion. Functionally, the whole Legion is still on Terra. Just because
yeah.
120 dudes not like that's just an
No,
accounting error.
yeah, yeah.
So almost don't worry about it. So yeah, all good. I don't think there was anything else from the kind of setup.
No, there was no missions described in this. So I had to remind me how to play this game. I had a game beforehand just as a refresher, and I thought I sent the pack to Grant to say, oh, let's give this a go, and we realised, oh, actually, there's no missions in this. Okay, cool. We'll just play a standard straight up game. That's fine. I was slightly surprised not to see the missions, and those were actually revealed to us on the day, weren't they?
Yeah, I don't know if there was, and I don't have those white dwarfs. I'm not 100% sure if they were the ones from White Dwarf, but if they are, then they're available. So I kind of think just like put them in.
Yeah.
If they
Or
were,
similarly, say that. Oh, I said actually didn't. Yeah, the following rules. Well, the following rules of White Dwarfs rules for doubles event. It didn't tell you the missions. It didn't say. I don't think it says that we're playing the missions from those White Dwarfs. So yeah. Anyway, that was a surprise and meant. But then it wasn't about the winning. But at least you've been familiar with the game type. Yeah. Anyway, these were.
it would just so there were. There's almost always questions around non-standard missions.
Hmm.
So I kind of don't mind. I actually prefer not. I prefer not giving away and not knowing all the missions,
Okay. Yeah.
but that you're going to play because people will build. Certain people will build armies to play those missions, um, and that's not a mindset that I think fits my events that I run.
Hmm.
So I like to discourage that. It also leads to more skew lists and more negative play experiences both ways.
Okay. Yeah. Those are good.
So
Those are
you know,
compelling arguments. Yeah.
um, yeah. So I don't really mind that. We what we had four. So we turn up at the event. There's 4 games over 2 days. I like 5 games. I can see definitely for doubles. They take doubles games take longer than normal games, um, and I can see that I'm in the majority when it comes to this 5 game, 4 game thing.
Minority. The minority. Probably.
So did I say majority? I meant
Yeah.
minority. So
Having spoken to people there as well, because I was favouring the 4 game, and most people I spoke to were of the same mindset. I didn't hear anyone, but I was aware. I knew your feelings on that, and it's a reasonable argument. Say, I'm here to
large
game.
points,
I'd like to get in
doubles,
as many as I can. Yeah.
and for me particularly, having not played in a while, playing a lot of games,
Mm.
I take that pressure off as well. Um, but hey, that is what it is. Should we just talk games and then we can?
Yeah.
So first
I'll try
up,
and keep it brief because I did take notes.
it took extensive notes in some games. So oh,
Yes.
no. What should we talk? What we should talk about is our armies. So I
Good show.
had Space Wolves, as I said, Lehman Russ leading the brave Space Wolves. Lehman Russ with his 2 dogs. We had a Contempt Dreadnought. I then had 15 Grey Slayers, 15 Grey Stalkers, with a couple of Power Fists, couple of Power Lances, a Power Axe, Thunderhammer on Sergeant for both of those. And I had 15 Assault Marines. What else did I have? I haven't got my list on me. It's floppy. That was about it anyway.
Yeah, you had
Because
three squads of 15 each, and it
yeah,
was Slayers.
Slayers, Stalkers, and Assault Troops. I've got my
That's right.
list right here. And then, as I say, I didn't have any tanks. I had a Contemptor, Russ, and the Wolves. Yeah, and that was 1750 points. Because Russ ain't cheap, baby. 650 for him with his 2 Wolves, which
Yeah.
is pretty awesome. And sorry, a Caster of Runes. So the Space Wolf special console, who's your Psyker.
Oh, of course. Yeah, he was pretty key.
He had his moments. What did you bring?
I brought Solar Auxilia, the brave mortals stepping into that environment, and I went with a marshal, as you tend to have to do. I went with a command squad to accompany him to be able to issue his commands around. I took them in the reborn cohort so that they could be a bit slower because they were all old men, but they could reroll ones for shooting, and which was quite handy. I had two 20-man las rifle squads with the various little minimal upgrades of Vox and Vexilla, etc. You had the command squad. I actually went down the route of making them quite expensive because I bumped them up to 10-man and had them, largely 9 of them, armed with plasma guns. And they also had a fancy Vexilla, which made them line, along with the 2 20-man squads of dudes. And that was the infantry. And then alongside them, they were supported by 2 squadrons of 3 vanquishers each. So a total of 6 Leman Russ vanquishers, the famous Leman Russ vanquisher in the Solar Auxilia list. And then I took, lastly, 1 command tank, which is locked to being a battle cannon tank, which is generally a bit rubbish. However, its command tank means it can be upgraded to have a flare shield and a Cognis signum, which when it's attached to one of those squadrons, makes that squadron really rather effective at its shooting and survivability. So we were very much the line, weren't we? It is a 200 and I'll look it up. It's about 245 points, 220 points, something like that.
It is
Just to get a
interesting.
+1 to hit and a flare shield that will
The flare shield
probably
is,
die.
to be fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes a difference. So yeah, my idea was let's see how basically infantry wolves can do charging across the table. Leaving Russ backed up by 6 Russes effectively.
Well, as we said, Lehman and the Russes was
Lehman and the
quickly our
Russes.
team name, wasn't it? Yes.
Yeah. So it was there was no plan beyond. Yeah, this is cool. Let's do this. See what
Yes.
happens.
The plan consists of I will form a line and shoot things. You will run forward as aggressively as Space Wolves can do.
And die a lot. But
Yeah.
it's kind of happened. But hey, it's cool. So first up, we played Connor and Dan.
We did.
With their Iron Warriors and their Death Guard. Well, trying to remember what they
Immediately
had.
seeing
A
the
lot of
Titan
guns.
was immediately putting out having on the other side on their tray as they brought it over this big, intimidating looking Iron Warriors knight was kind of cool. There was siege. There was all the usual suspects in a Iron Warriors list with siege tyrants in there and some long range goodness and some pretty resilient foot slogging infantry. And then the Death Guard, there was quite a lot. He had rapiers in there. He had autocannon team. He had the 2 Derrideos were fairly
Plasma.
intimidating. Yeah, plasma
Yeah,
Derrideos. Yeah, a
worrying they are.
couple of was it laser vindicators or was it
Laser
demolisher?
Vindicators, yeah. Yeah, it was quite worrying. So the one thing I will note, we played across 3 tables over our 4 games. And each time I looked at my army and went, if we're not going first, they're getting shot off
Yeah.
before I can do anything. Luckily, 3 out of 4 games we won the roll to go first, which helped massively.
Mm.
And this was the first, first game. It was
Particularly in
like,
this game, wasn't it? Yeah, I agree.
there was so much shooting, but
If
the
we hadn't gone
mission,
first, wow.
yeah. What was this mission? There were objectives.
This was where you've got to turn on the atomic devices that are going to drill in and destroy the. I think we were
Yeah,
battling over Chemos, weren't we? So there were certainly 3 objectives strung across the middle of the table.
yeah.
And it was could you
That's
get
right.
them and move them back? They were
They
relics, weren't
could
they?
move. Yeah,
Relics,
if
yeah.
you control them at the end of turn 2 onwards, you can move them 6 inches. So my plan was I play the game in their half of the table and kind of pin them back,
Yeah.
and Russies shoot the biggest targets, which was the Kaitan, because it's not so much what the Kaitan can do, it's that the Kaitan will blow up once it's done what
Yeah.
it wants to do, and also kill you then as well. So instructions were given to Howard to destroy the Kaitan.
Yeah.
Instructions were given to the wolves to get involved, and turn 1 charge with some assault marines is always fun, because the space rules are, I don't think they're, a lot of people think they're an amazing legion. I think they're a cool legion, but assault troops being able to move so fast.
It's intimidating. It's intimidating for them on the other side of the table. There's no way around that. It's intimidating,
I
even though
played it that
when
way
they
as
hit,
well.
it may not be devastating, but it's
But the
just like,
plan was
whoa.
also the plan was also control. I will say, so it's, as I said right at the top, it's been I haven't played with wolves that much actually, and it's been a long time since I played regular Heresy, playing other games, and there are so many moving parts to Heresy that we got some rules wrong in various games. It was also just not the time to look it up, like in the middle of the games. Like we're playing people who know what they're doing as well in some of them. Like the game we played, like game 3 against Nathan, and that, both sides were getting rules slightly wrong. Not in any major way, but it's only remembering halfway through. It's like I don't think I used it, but fearless units can't evade and they can't do something else, but they can do this, and then this unit can do this, but it can't do that, and then that has to be this type of unit. So it becomes quite hard to keep track of everything. But yeah, assault troops, great movement, charging, standing in the way, stopping. What did he have? Grave Wardens. He had some tanks. He had a character. He had some basic Death Guard dudes.
Scorpius was in there at the back line there.
Scorpius
I'm just
was
looking
over
at some
there somewhere.
photos here.
But
His
but
firebase was pretty potent with the 3 rapiers and
there was a
the
lot.
10-man autocannon squad with the
Yeah.
monstrous signals. They were putting out a weight of fire. They were demolisher vindicators, surprisingly. They weren't the laser ones.
Which will do
The
horrible things
tyrants
to me.
also were doing. The tyrants
Yeah.
were really unlucky. His dice rolling with those were unlucky against
Well,
the
I
tyrants.
also think he put them in the wrong place. But
Yeah,
that
I'm
was
not
slightly out
sure.
of the way.
They weren't the best use against
Utilised.
armor
No.
14. Yeah.
So the plan was get up onto these objectives. We misread the mission, thought we could move them turn 1. We couldn't. But I get up, pull them back. Howard steps up slowly to stand on them whilst I keep busy, which is essentially what happened. Now so we managed to kill the kite in turn 1. Turn 1 of Russ is doing what Russes do, although we fired the wrong units. We had this a number of times at the weekend, didn't we, where you fired your smaller unit of guys who brought something
So
down
annoying.
to 1 wound left, and then
Yeah.
like the first or second shot from the
Well,
other unit
my inability over the entire weekend to roll a 6 on the damage table
to roll a single
with
6 on it. I don't think you did it.
I think maybe once, and it would have been against something that was inconsequential. But it blew up a rhino.
Yeah.
Great. Like the things where it really would have mattered to make them really detonate.
Yeah.
Just wasn't going to happen. Other than the things that auto explode, obviously. But yeah, it was. And more than once, there was the squadron fired, left it with one thing, and then the second. I had to use the second squadron,
Yeah.
and the
Because I
bloody
didn't have the I didn't
coaxial
have the guns
autocannon.
to
No,
and
to
that's
do
the
anything. There was no nuance with it. Yeah.
No, the functional issue with your list was it was all in those 2 units, and
Yeah,
had
entirely.
we planned it, I could have taken things with 1 multi-melter, more than that. Like the Dreadnought tried it a couple of times, didn't work, but I could have taken the 1 thing with 1 gun to just finish something off, like the reliable 1 hit.
There's another way of taking this, which would have been 3 lots of 2 tanks instead. Even that would have given more options rather than the 2 squadrons of 3. The 2 squadrons of 3 are there to
Then
maximise the benefit of one of the commands.
yeah, exactly. So
It's not a
it's one of
subtle
those things.
thing.
But
It meant you couldn't break it down.
we knew we didn't have an optimized list, but so we were quite happy to take that chitin down. We'll deal with the other stuff because Russ is standing in the middle of their army, and I think the one mistake Connor and Dan did is they focused too much fire on Russ and your tanks actually, and not enough on the troops, which are scoring the objectives, or even not scoring the objectives, just being in the way. And Russ did his thing. I can't even remember what Russ killed in this one, but he kind of ran through a load of Death Guard.
Well, he got up into the sort of fire base that
that's
that
right.
they had on the other side. There was quite a tightly packed group, which meant his rhinos got kind of locked in place. So he had these rhino squads there, which just ended up staying there, and Terminators, and they all just got munched eventually. But they were all virtually in their deployment zone.
Yeah, and he eventually
Rather
killed
than being
them, like the
up in the middle.
rapiers, and
Yeah.
and they made a kind of a swing at it. towards the end, but it was just too little, too late, and we were like, okay, we've got just enough dudes on objectives. We started to get hammered in terms of losing models. But the good thing about my army was it was protecting all your guns. So all your dudes weren't. It wasn't till game 3, game 4 where people, like Nathan and that, realised that your units can
Yeah.
die, and
Christ, yes. They also had the
Gibson
tools to do it.
and Gibson had the
They
tools to
had
do it
the
as well.
tools. It's like, oh, here's
Yeah.
two Sakaran Punishers.
Yeah.
Yeah, turns out Solar Auxilia don't like them.
Oh no. So
They start
yeah,
to evaporate. All
it's a
Volkites for
really
that matter.
fun game though against Conor and Dan. Like it turns out the Chiton doesn't make it past turn 1 in any game. Big target on it.
Yeah.
It's always going to wait. It also blew up fairly big, didn't it?
It did. It wasn't the thing that blew up the most significantly out of our games, but it was, yeah, it certainly had
Yeah.
an impact early on. I think it was, yeah, it would have been interesting to see that sort of way forward over another turn. If that had hit one of the units, that might have been rather different, or just, started pushing us back. But I agree with you in terms of becoming a target priority question. That became quite interesting. And then when something didn't work, I was like, oh no, that I really needed that to work. Otherwise, the return fire is going to be painful on
Yeah.
another part of the army. Like if I don't kill one of those dreadnoughts, Greg's taking a lot of plasma. Oh, I've left it on 1 wound. Brilliant. Well, enjoy that, Greg. And then crap. Move stuff around. So as you say, it was quite. Yeah, it was a very interesting game to work through. I'm really glad we did that one first as well. I thought it was a great opener for the whole weekend.
Yeah, I think I kind of gave them my best sports. We voted after game 3, so game 4 couldn't have won it.
Mm.
So yeah, I think I gave it to them. But yeah, no, it was great fun. Game 2, Peter and Oz. So Peter and Oz have been to my events for a long time. Father and son, really good guys. Dark Angels and Mechanicum.
Yeah.
Almost like less overall like scary killing power, but concentrated in a few more areas. They had a Night Castigator, which was going to just ruin my basic troops, and
Yeah.
then they had an Exindio, which had it been able to shoot at your tanks would have happily ruined one
Oh yeah.
unit a turn
Having
kind of thing. Big reach.
chatting to Peter later and hearing what that was doing to other vehicle units and otherwise, it's like, oh my god, that thing was more terrifying than I had expected. But it was
Yeah.
it was a potent combo they had over there on that side of the table.
Was this another one where you had? Did you do it in one round with the big tank squadron?
Yeah, we did it in round 1, and more significant. So the castigator was right.
That's
We
right.
need to try, and even also said himself, this hasn't survived past turn 1
Yeah,
in the
again,
game.
yeah.
Like, okay, that would be a shame to be to
To
break that
break that,
tradition.
yeah.
So fired everything. One squadron took it down to 1 whole point, I think,
No,
and I
you killed
feel
it
like
because you used your other squadron on the ex-Indio.
that's true. So it was
Yeah,
one
so
squadron was able
you
to take it down.
took it down. Yeah, and it must, for those who aren't aware, like the Executioner cannon on the Russ is a fantastic beast. You got a pintle mounted,
A Vanquisher cannon. Yeah,
sorry, the Vanquish cannon. You got a pintle
yeah,
mounted auto cannon
yeah,
to hopefully then re-roll any misses, hitting on 3s with the Cognoscignum,
yeah.
and Brutal 2, AP2, Sunder.
Well, and also the autocannon was actually doing work. I keep thinking of
Auto
it as a
cannons are
stubber,
fantastic.
but the autocannon with the Ren 6 was surprisingly effective on its own. It was plinking hull points off things. And you're like, well, actually, that's quite significant.
Mm,
But then the reroll on the Vanquisher cannon, where it's normally listed skill 4, so the one squadron was at listed skill 3 rather, hitting on 4s. Ooh, yeah, I kind of need that reroll to be in place. We were really hoping the autocannons landed the hit, but as you say, yeah, one unit putting out 6 autocannon shots, 6 of these Vanquisher cannon shots, which, as you say, are strength 9, AP2, brutal 2, Sunder. Like, oof, yeah, there's a
yeah,
no messing, and then 3 las cannons as well.
as
Yeah,
well. Yeah,
2 squadrons of that. Yeah,
and the big cannons, hopefully re-rolling all their misses, but also against tanks re-rolling failed pen rolls, and in some
yeah,
cases, you can do it with Sunday, can't you? You can fish glances into pens if you've rolled low against a tank that you can blow up in one turn if you can ever roll sixes on the damage thing. But hey, there we go. But the castigator blew up, and he had, it wasn't an over the top mech force, but he had a bunch of Myrmidon Secators and a bunch of Myrmidon Destructors. No, he had 2 squads, one of each.
Or was it 2? Right.
And he had some Thalax. And he took out 3 out of 5 of the Secator, no, not the Secators, of the Destructors who are Volkite, which would have ruined your day. And then it took out I think it took out the 3 Thalax, took out a unit of Thalax.
Yeah, I think so.
And took out something else as well alongside it. And then you turned around to the Exindio with the other squad and did that in one round as well. And it was like, well, that's a result.
Yes.
Cool.
Because I think that would have been a much more difficult game if either of those had been kicking about. Because they played a strong game, I thought.
I mean, yeah, they did. And they can play. And they absolutely pummeled me as revenge.
They really did.
Taking out the squads.
Dark Angels entirely fueling the rivalry with the Space Wolves.
Interemptors. If you ever get close to Interemptors, I probably moved a little bit too far forwards. But again, this mission was 5. No, again, it was fairly
I'm
central.
looking at it. I think it was only 3 actually. 1, 2,
3 again.
3 objectives. Yeah.
And it was again, okay, pin them back. Like if we can score the objectives up to X point, then we win the game. As long as we don't lose, Russ and Warlord, and I think this one was also. I kept the paperwork somewhere, but I don't know where I put it. Line breaker, things like that. So it's like if we can push into there, we can reduce how many points they can get, and if we can hold X amount of objectives till turn, because it's only 4 turn games as well, because they were playing the modern way, which interesting. But once we get to a point, we can't lose. So you hyper aggressive, pin the enemy back, even if it's sacrificing units to do it, but you'll get up enough. So yeah, interrupters can roll forwards and half delete a unit of Space Wolves. I think I had one little dude left in that squad who ran away by the time he got shot. Another unit getting completely mullered. Russ kind of standing in the middle.
He also had a very effective assault squad, and he had that fire wing.
I think Martus dudes.
Yeah, they were pretty intimidating as well. They
charging
seemed to do
in,
work.
being able to be AP 2, is it AP 2 for 1 round or AP 3 once per game? It's pretty amazing. So I was taking some punishment, all except for Russ. And I was trying to remember what Russ killed here.
I think his big thing was he went into that big squad of assault marines, and
yes, he
the
did.
Nazis, and and the sword did work because there was he ran out 12 of them.
They had a large 12, 12, something like that, with a couple of characters in, Apothecary character, because the Dark Angels character, I can't remember what it's called, but if you accept a challenge, your unit becomes fearless even if that character dies. So the turn I charge in or counter attacked, whichever way I did it, he accepts a challenge, so you're not running. So it's like, okay, cool, you've wasted all, Russ's buffs have gone or what have you, and I'm standing, and then next turn the apothecary can step up, or the champion can step up, or whoever needs to can step up, and then they can be taking leadership tests on a really high number again. They can be stubborn or what have you. There's just, and that is the bane of Primarchs running by themselves, is they can be challenged out, which is not necessarily a bad thing because of how powerful Primarchs are. But I was like, okay, cool. Well, I have got the Sword of Bale Knight, which is a fantastic weapon. Russ has got 7 attacks at weapon skill 8, and it has Murder Strike 4 up, and it's brutal too. So cool. I'm going to kill anything infantry, anything that's not a Primarch is probably going to die in that challenge. Fine. More importantly, if you do a single wound with or kill a model with a Sword of Bale Knight, any leadership morale checks, break tests the enemy have to make are made on 3 roll an extra dice and remove the lowest. So even sitting on stubborn leadership 8, I think he was. No, he wasn't stubborn, but he had a decent. I did only one combat by because he could then attack me because Russ was by himself, or he killed off wounds off dogs, that kind of thing. So he'd only lost combat by 1 or 2. Takes the roll, makes it by 1, and I'm like, oh, actually, Russ does cause fear, which means that a whole unit of however many hundreds of points is then
I'm
run
looking at
down.
it. It was 15 of these guys, and then you had an apothecary and possibly some other kind of character in there.
And
They've
he's
all got
initiative
combat
7.
shields.
So,
yeah.
Try rolling more than I roll on a 7 plus a d6. That sword means he can do that to those big tar pit. As long as they're not fearless, there is a chance, because it happened again later on, didn't it?
It did. This was the first time this happened, but it was significant at least twice, and probably more over the weekend. But that was our left flank that he
Controlled,
kind of did that. Yeah, he was largely doing the work down there, which, considering the damage that the interrupters did before that and the damage those guys would have done had they got further into the lines, he kept them over there. The Myrmidons were a problem for a while. I mean, they were just walking forward and putting out fire like we wouldn't believe, and we were putting a lot back into them. And I don't think you charged them. You were moving around to avoid that, I think, or did you charge them in the end? I don't remember.
No, I didn't have anything to charge them with.
Everything.
Like,
yeah.
They also, the units I have don't necessarily do well against them because I can't get the strength to double them out. So, so many wounds. Hitting on 4s at best. But once they'd shot me, because they did do the right thing. They did try to take out my troops, but we ended up killing almost everything they had. That castigator blowing up turn 1 really helped.
That was significant.
But again, your basic troops weren't really threatened too much because the threat was.
I mean, I'm looking at the photos here. I mean, if I remember correctly, the command squad took a bit of a kicking, but
they didn't like the plasma.
lad
Sure.
squads, funnily enough, the lad squads didn't really take a great deal because they were strictly screened by your guys. They were but the 30-inch range on those guns, which they're firing on the 3-inch move. Problem is, it doesn't do a great deal of it, but it was still enough to take the odd marine off. Yeah, it is a lot of dice for not a lot of effect, but it was taking the odd, few marines off of a squad here and there, which adds up.
For sure, we got a bit lucky that laser destroyers didn't do much. Rode a little bit of luck there, but again, it was a case of push on, get those points, try and maintain that lead, which our army had to do. Had to go for the lead early. We couldn't outshoot someone. We couldn't outfight someone. It had to be about getting in early, getting down and dirty. But I did feel a little bit for them because it was like the Rust thing. It's I think it's one of those things that some people don't almost have to see played against. Like, I've played enough Warhammer Fantasy Battle to know, actually, with lizard men with 3d6 removing the highest, word bearers will tell you like the amount of times you actually fail a leadership test doing that. Like when you're doing it in reverse, like, okay, you're a leadership 9. Well, actually, I mean, again, Warhammer Fantasy Battle making charges with swift striding units, old style, where you're rolling 3d6, picking the 2 highest. You start making charges that other people think, really? And I'm like, well, it's not that hard to get a 10, actually. It's not odds on, but it's well worth the gamble.
It's happening quite a lot, yeah.
And with Russ, he's got to be in combat anyway. They actually charged me. I'm trying to remember. They actually charged me, and I was like, oh, this could be bad, but Russ could do his thing. So, but it was a great game. They were great guys.
That felt like a really brutal game. That one in particular,
it was brutal.
It felt tense throughout that one.
It's a lot of stuff dying.
Yes.
I think we should just probably go on to game 3. this was an interesting. This was the tactical game, wasn't it?
Oh god, yes.
Nathan and Rich, Night Lords and Death
Death
Guard,
Guard. Yeah. Death
and
Guard,
this.
which terrifyingly they painted in like 2
Oh, I
days.
hate it.
It
Makes me
was all
sick.
just built and base coated on the Thursday, and the game started on the Saturday. Like what? But yeah, both lovely looking armies, really nice. I mean, Rich, well known for great, great painting and things, and Nathan's army looked brilliant too. Yeah, really
Yeah,
nice.
we had. This was the 5
Yes,
diagonally across the middle of
and
the
this was the
table. We had
diagonal, wasn't
ours.
it? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
This was the
and we were diagonal. And one again, another big relief when we won the turn on this one, because they had a decent amount of shooting again. I can't even remember what I targeted you at. It was like
well. We were
there was
balanced.
stuff.
They had 2 laser vindicators,
Yeah, that's
and
right.
this was the
Sorry,
one that was
these ones were the ones
particularly
we.
irritating that we didn't roll any 6s. So I managed to
Yeah,
destroy one of them, but left the other one able to shoot. It was out of range of my tanks, but still, the bloody thing was still rolling around. I
yeah.
forget what the second target was. I can't remember if it was a contemptor
I think it
or
ended
whether
up
it
being
was.
a contemptor actually.
I can't remember if it was a contemptor. Anyway, they had.
Sakaran?
So
No.
the Night Lords, they had 2 Sakaran Punishers. They had 2 Laser Destroyer Vindicators, a bunch of infantry. He had some very cool. He'd used the Lord of the Rings goblins as like barbarian mutant
Yeah,
guys. They were not auxilia. They were militia, weren't they? But with Alchem jackers, so they were basically a tar pit. He had
yes.
a few units of those designed to slow everything down. I think there was a veteran squad and a rhino. He had at least a land speeder. Oh yeah, he had a land speeder and a javelin in reserve.
Yeah.
Death Guard had
He
quite a
had
lot of
Grave
infantry.
Wardens
He
sat
had a
there.
lot of Grave Wardens on one side with a
Yeah.
Herald. He had a tactical squad. He had 2 Predators with Volkite and autocannons. He had a las cannon team. He had a heavy bolter rapier squad, which was effective.
Yeah.
2 Contemptors,
There was no.
another tactical squad. Yeah,
So this was the first time there was no big target for your units, and it was like, oh, hold
correct.
on, we're going to have to overkill everything with the Russes, kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, rubbish. This is not the kind of army we like. The nice big juicy target. That's what the Russ units want to shoot at.
yeah,
So it was like,
yeah.
yeah, it was like, okay, shoot at the Punisher, stop the Punisher killing your dudes. Shoot at, yeah, as you say, um, one big tank that, okay, right, stop the Contemptor because the Contemptor can do, annoying things and what have you. It was very much that kind of game. And this was the one where Russ launched himself up the board. Um, the Assault Marines did a turn 1 charge into 10 of these mutants, uh, just and blocked off. There was a handy piece of terrain. And I think they thought I might go for a multi-charge in, but charging Grave Wardens with power armor is just death. So, so whatever. So I literally just blocked off access to the objective, and which proved pivotal actually.
Mm.
It was kind of a long way round for Death Guard to go to get into that. Russ standing in the middle of the board, moving up on the other side. Cool, fine. Didn't kill as much as we wanted. Not a problem. Okay, here comes the big tar pit unit to charge Russ. Brilliant. And this was the second time where the Sword of Baal Knight came in again,
Oh
because
yes, yeah, because
they
there was
took
a lot of mutants here,
because
weren't
he
there?
could
Yeah.
have like it's got like he had like 3 or 4 people who could challenge or something. It was like, oh,
Mm, mm,
this could be Russ all game until we maybe be able to get someone in to help him. Um, but it was like, okay, cool, challenge, yep, cool, yeah, blah blah blah. He's stubborn, cool. Take a leadership test. Sorry, you failed. I've run you all down,
mm-hmm.
and Russ is free. Um, I mean, I had countercharged this unit actually. It was like he was coming for me anyway, but I was like, oh, I'll hold you back there. Um, but yeah, so I think I ended up killing them in, so I could charge in our next turn, kind of thing, like without being shot at. And then Russ did again bad things to various small units, and they did kill some dogs, but he didn't take many wounds.
It was quite apparent that the Space Wolves were in the power armored Space Wolves units were in trouble.
Oh, big time.
More so than any other ones. The weight of fire and the target prioritization that they brought to bear. And they had a lot of anti-infantry firepower, effective firepower, and it was layered in the right way. I mean, I'm looking at the photos here. You also had that librarian throwing out the flame, which was pretty serious. Yeah, the Night Lord's fire coming off of them was significant. The Death Guard, weight of fire. I mean, those 3 rapier carriers with heavy bolters were horrendous. The number of dice he was rolling, as were the 2 predators, to be honest, with the autocannons and the Volkite. My command squad in the middle took, because they didn't like the look of the plasma. The
but they also were playing to kill the line unit.
They did. Well, that came in second though. That came in later because the 2 big squads. I mean, they really went for your Wolves units, and then they really went for the solar squads.
All my 3 units were line units as well, but they were like, cool, take the line out. The Wolves are here, the immediate target. Take them out.
Yeah.
Concentrate on that, and they didn't worry too much about your tanks.
No, they didn't.
Like,
his javelin did some work on that. When
dropped
they came
in behind you, didn't he?
Yeah. So it was game 3 was the first time one of the Russes was destroyed, and the javelin came in behind them, bound to, flies in behind them, detonates one Russ, it blows up, damages another one. His fire even comes in with the chainsaw and the bolt pistol on the guy, and he's taking a hull point off. You're like, oh my god, this is banging. So it takes the squadron of 4 down to 2, damaging one of them in the process. In one sort of move, that's it. Now, I think it wasn't destroyed, was it? But it was heavily wounded, left on 1 wound, and it broke, I think, and ran away.
Yeah.
In classic Night Lord style.
And Russ,
this game was super close, wasn't it?
It was super close. So Russ ended up charging his unit with the Night Lord, there was a Warlord in.
That's right.
And breaking them again. Sword of Bale Knight doing its thing, but failing to beat his initiative roll. He rolled like 5 or 6 times. Yeah, pretty much. And Nathan's talking about this Warlord who never gets killed, who legged it, and I ended up rallying on the edge of the board and avoiding all the fire coming in at him. And it was like, really? Seriously? But we did get him in the end. And it was, it was
entire squadron of tanks open fire to take him out. Yeah. And he did dodge a whole bunch of it.
He did dodge a whole bunch of it.
He was dodging. It was like, are you going to dodge all of these Vanquisher shells? Oh my god! And he, as you say, he had a bit of a history that he all his retinue die, all his plebs die. He manages to stay alive on 1 wound, but happily falling back.
Yeah. Well, we held like there were 2 objectives on the left. We managed to, this was the one where these were like, because the first game they were like relics and we could pull them away. Or this one was like relics, we could pull them away. No, this one was the one where you could move them 6 inches. The first game was like relics where you could carry them around. And I was like, grab them, retreat.
These were Cortex controllers, weren't they? You were moving them around. Yeah.
And so the idea was me move up, throw them back into you step up. And I kind of did it a bit too eagerly, and we lost 1 or 2 points on that fact, like turn 2, 3, but kept it safe. So muchness for muchness. And then where I'd held up this corner of Death Guard, Nathan did had a herald, so line scoring character who he'd swapped out of a unit of Grave Guard into another unit to score an objective out there, which was a good move. Basically, it allowed him to score 1 with his tax and 1 with his Grave Lord.
And it was surprisingly swingy, wasn't it, the way the objectives worked? That if you held them, if you score them, is if you scored more than your opponent, you got an additional victory point or 2.
Point scoring, yeah.
Yeah, so suddenly it sort of clicked up quite quickly, depending on whether you held 1 or not. Because if you held it and you contested, the opponent doesn't get the "I've got more than you" bonus. It swung quite quickly.
Yeah, and we got to the point in the last game where we ran out of time, and it was like, okay, well, if you do that, there is a way I can win this. And I think I'd run and charge Russ, which he can't do at that point. But it was like we were quick trying to go through it, and it didn't. Luckily, it didn't change because I didn't achieve. Basically, we ended up looking up lots of rules, so you have to when you charge, you have to maximize like people who can get in. but you don't have to pile in. Like you
Yeah,
may
that's right.
pile
Yeah,
in, and that meant that Nathan could, um,
hold
in this
held back.
circumstance, which wouldn't have actually happened, he can maintain his control of the objectives. My idea was to pull him off the objective with
Mm.
by killing models in combat, but also you then get into this situation of, well, when combat's ended and you do the end of combat thing, it's like, at that point, are we going to be outside of combat? Do you not have to pile in? And because it's not technically that way, kind of irrelevant. But there were we were constantly looking at stuff because there were weird edge cases coming up in this things, or not edge cases, but things that just don't happen that often. Like, how can you cast psychic power when you're fleeing?
Yeah, it took things that didn't typically matter, but really did in this
Yeah.
game because it
So
was coming down to really quite fine margins. Yeah,
you can use psychic powers when you're fleeing, as far as we could tell.
yeah,
Um, Not having looked through all the FAQs on it, but that kind of little thing, and there was some in our favour, some in their favour, going through. But yeah, fantastic game. Killing that warlord was what won us the game at the end,
yeah.
because again,
By
I think
1 point.
Rust
Yeah,
had taken a wound.
yes,
He'd like suffered 2 wounds by this point in the event and got one of them back. So
yeah, yeah,
his dogs had died pretty much every time, but that's what they do.
yeah. I
But
think
yeah,
I
it was.
still had. I'd lost at least 2 of the 7 Russes, but most of the infantry had died. Although they had taken so much firepower, it was
They had.
scary out of that list. Yeah, the
And well, I mean,
Punishers and the Volkites, etc.
what probably the other thing that probably won us this game was the Castle Rune psychic power to
Oh
grant
god, yes, yeah,
shroud. So you can give a unit within 6 inches shroud, or you can take the psychic test to give them shroud 3+ rather than 5+. And at one point, I mean, Nathan must have fired 4 different units into them, and it's like, okay, armor saves, shroud saves, okay, just shroud saves, okay, armor saves and shroud saves, okay, armor saves, shroud. Okay, 4 or 5 units of shot. I've lost one dude. Cool, put
no,
him over there. And this didn't happen every game. I was
no. I
failing
was
some
going to
other
say,
saves, but they absorbed.
had the dice gone a different way, that would have been,
I was also being canny with them though. I was moving them away. There were times when he was like, "Oh, you're going to charge here," and I'm like, "No, like we're not
mm,
playing. We're playing a tactical game here, like, and
mm.
it's cool and that's good." And both, I think everyone was involved in that. I was like, "No, they're holding an objective. They are not risking everything by charging off
Yeah,
someone."
there was a couple of those, wasn't there?
Yeah,
And the openness of the discussion, I thought, between us and them was really cool. I really enjoyed that. Certainly, Rich and I, not knowing the game as well as you and Nathan do, or appeared to, was an education. It was really interesting, and everyone was
yeah,
speaking like, "Well, this is what we're intending to do. What do you think?" Yeah, actually, yeah, let's do it like that.
sure.
The spirit I thought was brilliant in that game. They were in all the games, but that one in particular because it was quite high intensity.
Yeah, and yeah, I think because of the technical nature of it, there were a couple of
Yeah,
points where it was like, "Oh, shoot, hold on, what can that do?" Like, and we were both like,
yeah.
"Cool, you didn't know." Yeah, sorted. Take it back because I forget the um the reaction from, is it Death Guard? Could be to move back and do crazy
Oh
stuff.
yeah, that
Yeah,
was genius. They
there's a,
played
a
that
different one.
really well.
Yeah,
We fired on something and when we perhaps shouldn't have done if we'd have known it. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And the Night Lords one can be a bit funky, and reactions came up in the next game as quite a useful tool as well. I mean, the
Yeah,
Space Wolf one's brilliant. We had against Pete and Oz. I had a point where the unit the time he didn't move his 15-man jump pack unit was when his interrupters got out to shoot one of my stalkers or slayers, whichever one it was, because he knew that if he moved, there's a chance that I charge him with my
oh yeah.
reaction and
The
ruin
impact
his
that had, the
plan,
psychological impact that had on people was significant.
to the point where he's like, "I'm just not moving this whole unit, and this
Mm.
guy's actually moving, but he's jumping to a point where you can't charge him, and can I move this all to a point?" And there were, yeah, multiple occasions over the weekend where it was like, "Okay, Greg hasn't used his Space Wolf reaction yet. How do I move?" I'll
Mm.
try and draw it out. Nathan that did that quite well, but I was quite happy with what they gave me. Um, but yeah, it the power is magnified when people get a little bit like kind of, oh, what do I do? What do I do?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was just a shame those interrupters started just outside 12. Again, we had that conversation. It was like, no, you can move them. Like, here's the units. I'm placing these guys. Here are the units that I can react to.
Mm.
Fortunately, your interrupters are too far away, so they can do what they want to do. But yeah, it was a cracking game against Nathan. It went on quite a while because of how technical it was.
Yeah, we powered into the lunch hour for that one, didn't we?
Yeah,
Yeah.
all good fun. And then we had a crazy game against Chris Gibson, a
Goodness
legend,
me. Yeah.
and Lee with their Alpha Legion and World Eater combo.
Chris Gibson, who I believe brought the finest chocolate brownies.
Oh, legend, mate. He's an absolute legend. He he had an Alpha Legion army, which was kind of
They
cool,
were
actually. He played
lovely.
a lot of
I
them.
really liked them. I just thought the paint job he did on those was brilliant. Big fan.
They
Exactly how I like to see Alpha.
they definitely had a plan of or in their army. So they had between them they had 4 contemptors. Amongst those 4 contemptors, they had 8 fists. It
Yeah.
wasn't subtle. It wasn't
Yes.
subtle. There was also a Leviathan wandering around as well. There were 2 Spartans with command squads in, which
They were just
were
land
pretty
raiders. They
beefy.
were just land raiders.
Oh,
They
just
weren't
sorry, Land
Spartans.
Raiders. Apologies. Yeah.
Mm.
There were some other bits. There was laser rapier destroyers, which were scary for you. Um,
Yes, never liked seeing them on the other side when you're a tank heavy
no.
list. He had a lot of foot slogging world eaters. Um,
Yes.
jump pack guys. The 2 command squads also. I mean, we only really saw. Well, we did only see one command squad come out to
Yes.
play, but that command squad was brutal.
Yeah. Yeah. They absolutely are. And world eaters are brutal. Um,
They were. This was the first game where they won the role to get first turn.
Go first. Yeah.
So they deployed first, which we made the most of
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they
We
spread across the entire board, didn't they?
Yeah, and their 2 command squads were together in these Land Raiders on our left flank. So I
Yeah,
made the executive decision to tell Howard to ignore the left flank,
yeah.
and we completely refused flank it. And I had some, and yeah, we were in a box, weren't we, on the
Super
centre
tight.
and
Yeah.
centre right, yeah. Um, but which turned out to be the right move in the end. We got lucky. Their turn 1 shooting was not good,
No,
but
no.
hey,
They
that
didn't. I
happens.
don't think did it. I
Two
don't
hull
remember it
points
doing
you
a great
put
deal,
down
did
here.
it?
2 hull points
Yeah,
basically
that was it,
on a
wasn't it? Yeah,
unit.
one on
I
each.
mean, to be
One on
fair
each
to them,
squadron. Mm.
yeah, 4 of their dreadnoughts were running forwards. The Land Raiders were the things that were trying to get shots, but were limited because of the way we used terrain. The laser
Yeah.
rapiers didn't do possibly quite as
Oh,
well as
they
they
were
would have
very
hoped.
unlucky. Yeah, the laser
Yeah,
rapiers were
that
unlucky.
was
They just did
that
some
was the
bad
key.
rolling. Yeah.
So we were like, okay, cool, let's go for it. And I'm like, game 4, let's go. And I was possibly a bit eager. Um, but we got a nice turn 1 charge again, or with some assault marines, and Russ charged up the board aiming at some contemptors. And
This is looking across the other side of the board. There's what is that? 30, 2 squads of 15, something like that, of
oh yeah,
World Eater assault marines. They haven't got jump packs, but they had
no,
just
they're
despoilers.
dudes. Yeah,
Yeah, dudes with chainsaws, and they were, and as you say, in the centre, 4 contemptors hanging around as well, and you just went for it in the middle.
yeah. So we, looking at the board, it was like, okay, the rapiers have to die, but you have the superior range on your guns. To me, like 30 inches, you can just ping wounds. And
Mm,
I'd actually set the assault marines up where they could potentially choose to charge them if they wanted to. So
mm.
you ended up doing enough with your long range shooting anyway. So that was fine. And then target the Leviathan was that had a cyclonic melter lance, and it was like, don't let that get near the Russes. So shoot that, and then he does the Alpha Legion. Oh no, I'm going to jump
No,
over
I'm not
here.
there. I'm over here.
Yeah,
You thought I
so
was
only
here? I'm
one
over here.
Russ
And
could
straight
see
into
him.
deep cover. I'm like, God damn it. Yeah.
Such a annoying move, especially when Chris played it well and could move forwards. It's like, oh, that's horrible. You could see it through a gap for the other unit to shoot at. but it was still there and still alive.
But it was nicely covered as well. It meant he got a good,
Yeah.
tasty cover save because you were basically firing through ruins.
So I thought, stuff it, I'll charge it and try and plink off those wounds with some power fists. So I charged there. I ended up charging, say, this one unit of World Eaters, and Russ charged a Contemptor. And like we thought their shooting phase was bad. The World Eaters killed like 3 or 4, and we'd shot them as well. It's not like it was just a complete squad. They'd lost some. They lost. I lost that combat by a decent number and ran. Didn't get chased down. But that squad played basically no further part in the game.
Nothing
Um,
significant, yeah.
the Leviathan took 0 wounds. And I don't think I took any wounds either. But that's not the way that needed to go. And I forgot about Rusted Brutal, which is my own fault. And I didn't kill the Contemptor. It's
Oh yeah,
like,
that was well because with the Leviathan there was a squad of rampages right beside it, so they were
yeah,
lining up saying, "Brilliant, we'll countercharge all these." But yeah, Russ hitting those contemptors and
he went
not
into
killing the
the
first
middle
one he
of
charged.
them,
Yeah,
and then he was going to countercharge something to keep him safe.
yeah,
But not being
and he
able to
got
kill that
stuck.
one, I was like, oh dear, like there goes a
You
wolf
you
because
you
they're
were
instant killing
you were
wolves.
you were cursing when you realised, like a turn later, that
Oh,
you'd forgotten
yeah,
the brutal.
it's my own
That
fault.
was
All
you.
my own
You were.
fault.
Oh yeah, yeah. There was no suggestion or anything else, but you were
No,
cursing like crazy over that. This is one of
and
those really annoying rules that actually would have had a significant impact on
but
how
it
that would have
kind of
played.
this game kind of carried on. So Russ then got charged by 3 Contemptors.
Yeah,
The Rampages came in. I can't remember what else happened. There were a few plinky shots. Again, the one saving grace was again, these the Land Raiders couldn't get around to shoot anything. Uh, yeah,
yeah.
but
He had they had 4 vehicles. So 2 rhinos full of Alpha Legionnaires, 2 Land Raiders, both of which had command squads in. Only the World Eater one eventually got its command squad in when they did get in. Christ, did they do some work? But 3 of the Alpha Legion units didn't do anything. But it did demonstrate, and you commented on this during the game, that while the Space Wolves can move and get up in the grill, when they get there, they're okay at assault.
I mean, yeah, they
They're not what the World Eaters are,
no, they
and
haven't got.
that showed in
Yeah.
this game because 2 out of the 3 infantry units of your infantry units were pretty heavily neutered by turn 2.
Oh yeah.
The assault squad and the tactical squad that had gone into the Leviathan. I'm not even sure they were on the board.
Oh no, they weren't.
Turn
No, they weren't.
I think possibly even by the end of turn 2, certainly turn 3, all of the Space Wolves bar Russ were dead.
Yeah,
And they'd been
yeah,
fairly
because the
heavy.
third unit
They
that
hadn't
charged
done a great deal.
got kind of owned as well, because
Mm.
they charged across to cover. Like just again, this was a kill point mission,
Mm.
but characters that fell became objectives and could
Yeah.
score points either way. So you could either
Independent characters. Yeah. Mm.
protect your own, or execute the enemies. Um, so it was like, okay, well, Russ is in trouble, but kill points means if I've only got 5 or 6 units, so I can only give up 6 points, yeah, maximum. If we keep Howard alive and they actually had quite a lot of units, we
They
could
did.
win
Yeah.
this. So it was again like, okay, right, what's the mission? Things are going terribly, so we might not win it anyway, but let's try. So these 3, I mean, essentially, yeah, everything the World Eaters touched that had a Space Wolf thing on it died. Russ was the one shining light in that he got charged by these 3 Contemptors.
Oh, that was grim.
Um,
Looking down and seeing Russ surrounded by the 3
yeah,
dreadnoughts, and
and
then
it
the
was,
Rampager squad, and then the command squad all
but
line
it's all
up.
right.
Oh my
It's
god!
like it's fine. He's got 4 Contemptors around him. One's got 2 wounds left. He's fine. He's going to split his attacks up, and he will do 2 wounds in the whole combat, and and kill 1 dreadnought. That's not cool.
Mm.
But he only took 2 wounds himself. Thankfully, the weapon skill 8 was doing its job. But it was like, this is not where he needs to be. And essentially, through the combat, he ended up taking down, I think it was the 2 other World Eaters dreadnoughts and getting killed by. I mean, Chris was happy he killed all of Russ's dogs, both his dogs. That was all he wanted to do.
He said
But
he said that's the game done for me.
yeah, absolutely. He was absolutely delighted. But this one flipping Alpha Legion, I pretty sure it was the Alpha Legion one left.
Yeah.
But by that time, this command squad had done its business on the remaining wolves, the dreadnought and the units, and ran into Russ. And the sheer quantity of attacks, even hitting on
Oh, it was
fives,
enormous.
with rending at a really good
Did they
value.
all have lightning claws?
No, I can't remember exactly. Yeah,
Right.
most of them
Yeah.
did. Just meant that Russ, just, I mean, vast quantities of attacks. He only just died though, and
Oh yeah. Yeah.
had I won that, uh, again, Sword of Bale Knight, you never know, it could do its job.
Mm.
But yeah, it went down. But we got to whatever turn we got to when it ended, and your Russes had moved backwards. Your guys were shooting off. Your plasma guys had done a fantastic job on
Well,
ruining
I'm
some
looking at the
world-eaters.
photos now, and while Russ is there holding up 3 dreadnoughts, the Ravagers, or the rather your last infantry squad was dealing with the Ravagers. There's a squad of World Eaters running away, and this
Yeah,
untouched gun line of 50 solar alls just lining up. And then when Russ did eventually fall, what came out hit that entire line, just gun line, just opened up on them. So the firing, yeah, because I mean, I lost one Russ. I
yeah.
don't remember losing much else.
No, I think
Um,
maybe one or two dudes. Yeah,
yeah, and
uh,
they're firing 80 shots of las guns.
yeah.
It, was doing some work in this instance, and the plasma, as you say, had jumped forward and was doing more effective shooting. The objectives, we weren't getting any of it, but it was
But
about not dying.
we went to add it all up, and it was like, okay, so they'd killed like all my units, and us is down, and you executed um, my rune caster runes, and you're actually just about managed. This one little dude's holding your own
Oh
character's
yeah,
objective. Okay, cool. So you're on 14 points or 13 points. And it was like, okay, so we've killed 1, 2, 3 contemptors. We've killed your warlord, I think. We killed your this unit, this unit, this unit, this unit. Oh, we're on 14 points. We won by 1 point.
did we?
I think. Oh no,
I thought it
sorry.
was a
It
draw.
was the draw. I think it was finally a draw. It was very close. There was something in there, but yeah, it was like I think it might
I
have been.
thought it was a draw. Yeah.
Yeah, there was some discussion right at the end, but either way, it doesn't
Mm.
really matter at the end of the day.
No, no,
But
no.
yeah, it was a fantastic game. The guys were great. The fighting was brutal. The first 2 turns, we were joking. It was like who's going to fail hardest, and
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
a race to the bottom and dice rolls, and the Space Wolves were coming off worse. Luckily, you were doing okay, but the Space Wolves got absolutely ruined. And again, had I played more tactically, I wouldn't have been so aggressive. I would have made sure I was out of like turn 2. I wouldn't have charged Russ straight into a Contemptor. I would have made sure that he couldn't charge me turn 2, or could only charge one unit in turn
Mm.
2, and then I'm set up for counter charges, and that would restrict what he could have done, and allowed you to shoot more stuff, and who knows, but it was a fun game. You never know, that might not work. So it's not like you can just say it will work, but yeah, it
I
was
think
super fun.
had those. I mean, there was 30 Alpha Legion guys, 10 command squad guys, and 2 tactical squads that didn't play any part in the game.
Yeah, 0 part of
Would
the
have been
game.
very interesting to see what would happen if that. I think we
Yeah, I
were also
mean,
getting close to time here because we didn't we
oh
call
yeah,
it at the end of turn 3,
yeah, it
and
was
I think
quite
turn
tight. Yeah,
4, because then that command
they
squad would
had
have been in the inside of the Russes. Okay.
maybe it would have been an interesting one,
Mm.
because it was still a lot of terrain between
There
you,
was, and
and you still
similarly,
had
Russ
react.
actually had the brutal in the early round. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't think that would have changed anything overall, but
no,
you would have had reactions and another turn to then shoot as well, so finish off little bits and
true.
pieces. So yeah, but yeah, it was a great fun game
Really
against those
was
guys.
a very different
Uh,
kind of game to the previous ones as well because the objectives were so different. Our
yeah,
deployment was so different
yeah,
as a
I
result.
actually thought this was in many ways the best mission because it was
Mm.
different. I
It was
almost
dramatically
felt the
different, whereas the
most,
other quite similar.
yeah, it felt the most kind of realistic in that objectives are
Yeah,
great and make a good game, but often objectives, particularly when you can move them and do things like that, it doesn't always, like a lot of the times you're just getting objectives.
and you ended
Like,
up with some quite weird, what I would think of gamey moments,
yeah,
whereas this felt very, even though the photos don't really do it justice, but this felt very cinematic. The amount of
yeah,
movement involved here was more significant, I thought.
because even when the objective falls, it's like, because in game it's your character, like you soon forget what the objective was sometimes in some,
Yeah,
like, oh,
yeah.
we've got the relic. Does it matter what the
Whereas it
relic
was
is?
fairly
No.
obvious that that's the body of Russ.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that worked really well. Um,
Mm.
Massive respect for world eaters gained for you, I'm sure.
Oh
Don't
goodness,
want,
yes.
don't want those
Wow.
getting into you.
I mean, they would have if one of those squads had hit my lines. Oh my god, it would have been
Oh yeah,
a
would have
bloodbath.
absolutely blown up. Now, in all this, we haven't talked about the narrative at all. Um, we turned up at turn one, game one, first day, and Tom gave out the kind of the spiel that you get, which was, this is taken from the White Dwarfs and blah 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 blah, and it's the Scouring of Barbarus, and you all know what happened to Barbarus, so crack on. And I'm like, okay, does it matter? So we didn't feed any results back. We
No.
didn't have any kind of inter-game description about what the mission, why we were playing those missions. Really, there was a little bit, to be fair. Take that back. Um, in kind of you're playing this mission and it's this, crack on. Uh,
Mm.
and at the end of it, there was no. It was like, oh well, Barbarous is dead, and it's like, okay, cool. Your first
Yeah,
30k event, I don't think was a fair representation of a narrative event.
it was a collection of game. It was a collection of great games played with
Well,
great
it was a
people,
collection of games made great
but it was
by
a collection
the
of
people you're
games.
playing with
That's what I mean.
decent scenarios.
It was just these linked games. They weren't. No, they were just a series of games. They didn't feel terribly linked to me.
No, they didn't feel terribly linked. Partly because, well, I mean, vaguely read the the missions, but without the kind of bits around it, it felt less important to do that.
Mm.
It was it felt to me like an organized gaming weekend,
Yes, exactly. I
not
thought
a
that was it. But you
narrative
said
event,
that at the time, and I thought that was a fair summation of it.
which is not necessarily a bad thing. But the ticket I purchased before the full pack was out, I believe, was a narrative gaming event ticket. So I feel a little bit like, if you're going to do what you do, cool. Just don't even worry about calling it a narrative. Just be like, organized play weekend.
Mm.
Yeah, 4 cool scenarios. Come and have fun with mates.
Yeah.
Because I mean, at the end of the day, all these events are always made by the people you play or the people you talk to. You can go to the best event, but if you play 3 opponents you can't stand, because you're very different people or have different approaches, you're not going to have fun.
Mm.
And you can go to a terrible event, but if you play people and you have great fun with those people, you'll feel like the event was great.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I I don't want to. I'm not banging on the event because it was fine. It was, it was cool. We had
The
tables. We
standard
had,
of the standard
I
of
think,
armies there, and the tables all look great.
I
You could argue that maybe this could
I
have done
think
with
so.
some more terrain on some of the tables, but
All three events, it was like, okay, at least 2 of my scores are going to be standing out in the open.
yeah.
And I think this is a bigger question that we have to revisit as a podcast is terrain. Um, I think over the 10 years, or however long I've been going to and running events, the terrain is more sparse than it's ever been. I
That's
think
interesting.
potentially it's an effect of the reduced lethality of particularly barrage weapons, template weapons. If you had the tables we had back in first edition, games would be over in two turns, 2 or 3 turns back, like armies destroyed, because people would be dropping Typhon ignored cover anyway, filth. But be dropping Basilisks, be dropping Vindicators, be dropping Thanatar, templates, all that kind of stuff would be coming down, and the requiring to hit 4s 5s to get the AP3 or AP2 as required has changed that a little bit. But yeah, it just felt like, I bought an infantry army and I'm in trouble every time. Which, potentially is fine to have a lot of the time, but not on every table, thinking I've got no good place to set up. So, and I mean, we were kind of lucky. We managed. There was always like one piece of terrain we could use. It actually sometimes cut off quite a lot of the board, but your tanks weren't. Cover save's only a 6 up anyway in this game for tanks really. So you're relying on a lot of like line of sight blocking to stop big guns hitting other stuff. There wasn't very often that you couldn't shoot a target you wanted to shoot, was there?
No,
Even towards the end of
impossible to
games.
maneuver around. There was very few things that could hide. It did help that there were the 2 squadrons, so it meant one of the 2
Yeah.
squadrons was probably going to be able to reach them. But yeah, agreed. It wasn't as if that's going to, if unless I get them into the right place, I'm going to have real problems, which was something I was concerned about going into it. I
Sure.
thought this is going
And
to be
that's,
problematic.
I'm not going to hold that directly against this event. I think that's potentially a cultural thing within the UK Heresy scene. Partly probably by people trying to stretch the amount of tables they can put into a place. It's only natural. But it definitely has a different feel from 7, 8 years ago, particularly.
Did you see
The
the
other
2
ones.
boards that were in the side room?
Not properly, no. There were a lot of.
One of those 2 boards was a jungle board, and that
Right.
had quite a lot of terrain. But we're talking one board out of, was that 12? Well, no, more than that, far more than that. Whatever. It was quite a lot of tables in there. One of them was quite dense for sure. But in
Right. I
general,
don't. Again, I say we have to revisit it because again, lots of terrain doesn't necessarily mean blocking lines of sight and things like that either. So again, if you're not standing in terrain, then you've got it's a minor benefit for someone shooting through terrain. So useful area terrain and line of sight blocking terrain is something. But I didn't. So the other thing to note is I didn't walk around every single table, kind of looking at. It might have been better on some tables, to be fair.
the
So
standard of armies there was
there's
crazy
some really
good.
nice
I thought
stuff. Yeah.
the quality of. I mean, there's quite a few photos going around Instagram now with people circulating where people took photos of each other's armies. I tried to get as many as I could. There was a beautiful Demon's army that took best paint, I
Yeah.
think. There was one Demon's army. There was quite a lot of solar there, a full air cav solar, which looked amazing. A
Yeah.
fully June themed Sardaukar themed solar army, which looked great. There's a whole bunch of Ogrins there looking pretty terrifying.
It's great,
Um,
great content for a
it really was.
podcast talking about
Some
this
stuff
full
that you
army you can't
can't
see.
see.
Yeah, it was good. There's quite a few guys from a set kind of group of gamers like who all know each other going down. Some very accomplished painters as well and modelers and hobbyists. It was good. I would go again because it's very local.
Yeah, that certainly was better. And the location was brilliant, I thought.
It's a
Lovely
lovely place.
stuff on right on the doorstep. Off into Eastbourne, everyone was super friendly. Nice
I
chats in the evening. Great.
I wouldn't go again because it was like uh, because it was an event I don't feel I can miss in that respect.
Mm.
I would go again because it was fun and it's local and everyone seemed all right.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. It doesn't go to like top of the list of memorable events. You know, I might remember aspects of games, but the event itself won't necessarily be that memorable. If you know what I mean. And that's not supposed to be, this ultra negative thing
That
about it.
sounds critical, but it isn't. That's not how
Well,
you're
it's slightly critical, but
putting that.
it's not. It's not me putting a big down on the event. I had fun. At the end of the day, I had a weekend. I had fun. Cool. Yeah. Anything else? I think we probably leave that event there.
I think
Hopefully,
that covers everything.
no worries. All right, let's jump off here and see what we got next. Right, for our second part of the episode, we received an email, which is a rare occurrence, a proper email from Eamon Duffy. So thank you, Eamon. And there were a few things in there, but one of them was a possible topic of discussion for the anniversary episode, a retrospective of being a Heresy fan. Highs and lows, big events, big releases, cool events. GW events, independent events, significant Heresy fan experiences and things. So we're going to take a traditional Imperial Truth rambling approach to looking at those subjects. Where do we start? That's a good question, isn't it?
Yeah. I was just thinking about that. I mean, I thought, as you say, breaking it down into the different sort of almost aspects or different parts of it. Of you've got the lore aspect, you've got events, the models that came out, or sort of the game, and then maybe the game as another part of that. Because those are the key parts of it. The lore is, I mean, kicking off with the lore. I mean, it's tempting. I thought Eamon had to put together an excellent email that had some excellent points in there, where he structured it and ideas. One of those sort of hooks, if you like, was memorable moments. And I've been thinking about that since that email came in, and I've sort of been mulling it over in the back of my mind. It's a strange one because there's been a number of seminars or things at events that talk about where did the heresy come from, and I think they've talked about it in things that they put on YouTube. The Games Workshop put on YouTube as well. That it was written, and there's a lot of interviews with ex-creators, I suppose, and of Games Workshop where they've touched where people have retired and similar, where they touched on it as being, oh, this was just a footnote in Road Trader or a little paragraph here lifted from here, and then they ran with it for Titanicus, etc., where it all kicked off. I remember being aware of it, just thinking about where it started and where my interest in it started. I remember being aware of it, being a fan of the lore and reading books. I came into sort of Games Workshop with Epic, and then second edition War 40k. So I was aware of it, but that was when I was like 10 or 12. I was at university, and I think it was a roommate made me aware that there was the book series had come out, and I think by that point, I think I'd missed Horus Rising, and I think False Gods was out, but I went and got Horus Rising and read it, and I knew what the Horus Heresy was,
Right.
but that book, like so many people, totally captivated, and it was kind of I was in from that and knew I'd be hooked on that series, not knowing what that series would then go on to become. But I do vividly remember reading Horus Rising and that having a real impact and going, wow. But I didn't I knew what the Horus Heresy was, but I wasn't expecting it or didn't come in going, oh, wow, they've done a book series about this. I just thought, oh, cool. Okay, that's a part of the lore that'll be interesting to read. Quite like Black Library. That'll be fun. Let's see what this is. And I remember thinking, okay, this is a bit more significant. Where did you come in? Were you, because you may well have been aware of it in a greater degree. I don't know.
Well, for sure, it was the so Games Workshop Tunbridge Wells was on its Camden Road location even before I worked there. So I worked there just after Return of the King came out the year after, and was I left there because they moved from key timers to like Saturday part timers, and I wasn't giving up my Saturday. So we'd already, even before that, I was at the Veterans Thursday nights, and we would talk about the law. We would talk about code, Index Astartes. We would talk about
Yeah,
stories of the Heresy, and then knowing that Horus Rising was coming, we were talking about building up to it. We're going to hear about 10,000 Space Marines. Wow! And then Horus Rising coming out and kind of changing everything, kind of heresy wise, but having snippets of information like Lehman Russ chopping the head off a Titan and that kind of thing. That some of it stayed, some of it didn't, some of it changed slightly, some of it was just adapted slightly. But certainly, a few of my friends were there following every book as it was released
yeah.
for the first few.
I couldn't. I've just looked it up. I couldn't have told you that Horus Rising came out in 2006. I
I
would have said
could
it was. I would have said it was much earlier than that. Clearly, it
because
wasn't.
we talked about it on the show, and certainly talked about it with other people, knowing that it's been 18 years of my life reading those books.
Interesting.
I think I've got a cat making loads of noise, so excuse me, people, if I seem distracted at some point. But
I haven't heard. I haven't heard of
one of the
their
cats, well, no,
contribution yet.
it's more what is she up to? It's not even Magnus,
Just say if
which
it
is
was Magnus,
unusual.
there's a certain thematic
Yeah, but there we go.
interruption by Magnus would be kind of appropriate.
He's being a pain. So it wasn't really till like reading about the Isfahan campaign was amazing, but we knew it. There was information there, but like the first real kind of bombshell for me was Legion, and it was like,
Yeah, agreed.
whoa,
Yeah,
which is ironically kind of, I remember talking to someone who'd picked up one of the books because he'd read Jim Swallow's other stuff, and that's how we got into reading the Heresy. And he was like, "Of course, there's two Primarchs. It's Alpha, Omega," and it's like, but we've had 20 years or whatever of there being 18 Primarchs drilled home,
yeah,
and it was like, whoa, if that can change, what can change?
yeah. I didn't see that coming in any way, shape, or form. When that came along, I remember Fulgrim being quite significant. It felt like Fulgrim really sort of ramped it up a little bit. Thinking, okay, this is taking these kinds of books. It's taking it in a direction I wasn't expecting. It wasn't what I'd come to expect from Black Library. It felt like it sort of stepped up the maturity, and to a degree, I suppose the original trilogy did that. But as you say, Legion was the real one where, okay, we can be surprised here. There were real significant moments, and that actually was the start of really looking forward to each book. Getting excited about each book coming out. So it was interesting that you were already on it. I would kind of almost hobby ashamed to be just that I wasn't expecting. I wasn't looking forward to Horus Rising in the way that I would have done now, by a long way. It passed me by, and I had to sort of play catch up a bit. But Legion certainly, the revelations in there, both of it being Alpharis and Omegon, and the Cabal as well. Really, what that represented, and Perpetuals and similar being introduced. That was kind of a big deal.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think through for the novel series. So I don't want to get too bogged down in specifics well, don't want to get too kind of talk too long about the specifics of each
Yeah,
one.
yeah, because there's a lot of different aspects of the heresy
Yeah,
to cover, of which the books is one.
I think there felt like ADB came in with
First
First
heretic, yeah,
Heretic, and that seemed to be another kind of change. And it doesn't mean every book afterwards was like different because of that, but it seemed to add a weight to
yes.
the whole story setting.
Did he have a? Did he? I mean, I'm getting this is where we're getting too specific. I thought he might have had a story in Tales of Heresy, or a short story had come out that sort of fed into that. I could be wrong. Anyway, regardless, I agree. First Heretic, significant novel. It was a real, yeah. There was some knowing that there's something you could really get your teeth into was a big deal.
Yeah, he had, I think he had Butcher's Nails in 2012. Why is this not in some kind of order?
First Heretic was 2010.
I should probably be
I
read a
remember
bit of
No
the
No
stuff.
Fear. The excitement for No No Fear. I went to pick up a copy of that on release day because Dan Abnett was signing them in the Oxford Street store, I believe, and it was the Oxford Street store that was. And I went along to that because by that point I'd moved to London. So I was quite excited to see that one coming out, the meeting chat about that. And I remember being blown away with the presentation of the way that unfolded. Again, something that we knew pretty clear, well, had pretty good idea of what the major beats were of that. But the way that was presented with the countdown and stuff was very, very cool. I wasn't expecting it to be presented in that way, so that
Yeah,
was
it was.
pretty exciting.
Yeah, it was pretty significant, but that's significant was the nature of the stories and stuff. I suppose
Yeah.
there was a level of significance. Trying to remember when it was, but when there was that, basically when Laurie was brought on, even before we knew about Laurie Golding coming in and kind of formalising the continuity as much as
Mm.
could be done. I saw a bit of a tightening up because, I mean, this was um, before there were really any real strong heresy groups anywhere talking about this stuff. It was back on the first expedition forum
Mm.
where the official order of finding the Primarchs was put out by Laurie and a few other bits of information that we were starting to get that came from Laurie's mouth, and people were, big time questioning it because they didn't know who he was
Interesting. Yeah.
at that point. So there was kind of there was a change there to like the officializing of the law, not the canonizing of it per se, but um, like making it, things that led to changes in
Giving it
books.
structure, presumably. Yeah.
Yeah, as much as could be done.
Yeah.
Uh, and then I suppose the next one after that would be, we went through that really strong period where
Yeah.
all of
I'm
a
just
sudden
looking at that.
books were hitting the New York Times bestseller list and all that, and then there was that kind of backlash area where people were like, it's taking too long, it's all taking too long. Uh, but yeah, so I suppose you had kind of this bloat area, which I'm not sure I agree with, but a lot of people
I
did.
agree with that. I didn't find that particularly. I mean,
No, I mean
combination of
the odd,
pathos gets hit with that quite heavily, but I don't think
yeah,
that's the case. We're not
the odd
driving the
story
narrative forward directly. Yeah.
was not necessarily like required, but in general, I was fine with it. And then we entered this kind of more rapid approach, which then leads to um, leaving out Peter Garman, like effectively,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
having to fit Peter Garman in. So you kind of there were kind of stages of growth within the books of, yeah, let's do a trilogy. Oh, let's expand it a little bit. Oh, shoot, this is going to be a lot of books. Oh, we need to plan this. Oh, we need to tell all these stories. Oh, we're telling too many stories. Let's get to Terra, Siege Terra.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of how it grew, and
Yeah.
the community grew along with it, like adapted, changed, and for the first however many years we had the Black Library Weekenders as well, which helped kind of feeding that information, seeing timelines, all that kind of stuff. Um, yeah, real interesting. And now we're in the next stage, of the character series of books. The Primarch series isn't quite finished. What's coming next? Are we going to be seeing more expansion of the Heresy era
Setting. Yeah.
setting, which I'm sure we will. But yeah, interesting stuff. But then alongside that, like, it's what 12, 13 years now for the Black Books for Heresy as a game system,
Yeah.
which you had the pre-Heresy bit where they were doing Badab, but it was people were working out that, hold on, you're gearing up to make Heresy stuff here because you've suddenly got all Mark 3, Mark 4 armor out and about, and
Yeah.
and then you got the Black Books, which again, that first Black Book, just the Imperial armor books were great, but the level of
They were a step up, weren't they? Yeah.
presentation. I'm not going to say quality because some of the black books, you paid a lot for. They were good, but they weren't necessarily like other collectible books quality. But yeah, the presentation and the quality was up, but the presentation was really up, and both inside and on the actual structure of the book as well,
Yeah.
being
It
this
was
foam
clear that it
bound.
was a landmark thing because
Yeah.
it was such a literally and figuratively weighty tome of a thing.
Mm.
I mean, as you say, it came out in 2012, and I think, and that's coinciding with a pretty significant midpoint swell, I suppose, a really sort of golden period of the books as well. So 2012 was it's really motoring, isn't it, with those books coming out with the novels, and then you're jumping back to Isfahan with the black books, but they're delving into it in a totally different way. Consuming those early black books when they were coming out, knowing the excitement of that initial games day where it was released. I've spoken about it numerous times. Was bananas. It was
I mean, yeah, that
crazy.
was crazy, but there wasn't a structure around it. So
No,
there was a mad rush, but then it was people going off back to their own little community, small communities. And again, we're talking 2012. The internet was a different place. Like, even only
well, it's
12,
funny you should say that
12
because you were
years
saying
ago.
about the forum being there. I remember being excited about all of these, but I don't remember who I would have been talking to about this.
That mine was
Nowhere
my game group.
near.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I
and
didn't have that. I mean, I would have been speaking
Portal,
to like my housemate who was interested in it,
Warseer.
and you're like, yeah, kinda, but you weren't engaged in a way, were you?
I was on the first expedition forum a little
Mm,
bit, and but it probably would have been no. I wouldn't. Even, social media wasn't the
no,
same then.
nowhere near.
No. So yeah, it was lots of excitement when these things were out, but it was kind of all these localized pockets. And then it wasn't till for me really the weekenders again started up when they started up.
That
That
was
they
a real sea change, wasn't it? Yeah.
started to form this community. You had the open days as well for Black Library and things like that, and all of a sudden you started to see up people turning up at again and again. And I mean, I avoided. I was on Warseer or whatever. I didn't really use it. Daka, but various other places. I'm trying to think when did Twitter start? Like it's a
um,
long time ago, but
that would have been a bit.
yeah,
I mean, Facebook also went through a bunch of different versions because that was
yeah.
locked to just university for a while, and then it was locked to something else, and
But
then it sort of grew from there. But the communities, you tended to only know your friends through that. You didn't have communities around that. So, as you say, social media, as we certainly know it now, that came in quite a bit later.
well, so I'm looking. In April 2012, it hit 100 million monthly activity users. So I wouldn't have joined it then. I would have been a year or two later, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And primarily for Warhammer, but starting with the books when they were coming out, having conversations on that with people became that became the place where I started to
Mm.
kind of interact with it a lot, which obviously helped. That with the weekenders, the open days, those kind of things, started to kind of grow that out to being part of the Horus Heresy community. Yeah, crazy. And then the show started in 2014. So
Was there something that
um,
sparked that for you, or was it just something you?
I was a white guy in his 30s who felt like people needed to hear his opinions. That's how podcasts start, right? So
Well, yeah, that
I
was
was.
quite an early days for a podcast. You were there before it was cool.
No, I mean, not really. I'd been listening to podcasts for quite a long time uh, before that. It was before, well, it was just after the boom, really, when Serial when did Serial come out? Blimey. But I was listening to Warhammer podcasts for a lot because I was thinking about doing a Warhammer Fantasy podcast. Uh, I'm just, uh, yeah, and Dave at Garage Hammer was a mate, and it kind of confirmed came from doing After Illinois with Dave Whitek. So that would have been my 31st. He must be going 13 years. Yeah, just before my 31st birthday, I think. So when I went out to Gen Con, and met him, and after Eleanor was born of that, and then we started up with the Imperial Truth. So yeah, Serial came out in 2014. So I was already listening for a while before Serial. Serial was the first big, like, made podcasts known to people who didn't really get into podcasts.
I can't say I'm familiar with it.
End of 2014 into 2015.
Right.
And I'd been listening for a few years to Podhammer and then Bad Dice podcast and Heel and Hammer and a few others. So yeah, but I think the growth of Twitter, particularly for me, and then obviously Facebook was well set by then, really became kind of a place for, you started to see much more rapid growth of groups and things like that across those, which I think was a major part of it.
Yeah.
And I would go to Warhammer events and have people come up and be like, Greg, we need to talk about Heresy and that kind of thing around those times. So pretty cool. And the black books,
Yeah.
I suppose there are different levels of black books, but essentially you had the black books and then version 2, like second edition. For all that some black books were better than others, they were pretty much the same thing. And to be fair, the ones we got now are like just like the light version. They're kind of they're in the same family.
What you mean, the Lieber books?
No, well, no, I mean the campaign books that we've had, Beer Carmen.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah,
that's a better
not Beer.
analogy, perhaps.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that they're you can definitely tell they're related, but
Yes.
they're definitely not what they were. But then also they're not 75, 80, 90 quid each. So,
I'm just looking at the dates of when the black books came out. I mean, those first three, that's four. They rattled those out one a year, which
oh yeah,
was,
because they've been working on them well beforehand.
yeah, they had the body of material to be able to do so. Yeah. But wow, I mean, that was quite something. And then and even that one, Christ, they were doing them one a year, weren't they?
Well, for the first bit, and then it became 1.5 years,
Mm.
2 years for one of them, I think, pretty much. But I think the problem was people thought, oh yeah, one a year, and then when they weren't that, which actually in reality it was the first three, the fourth was just over a year. Am I right? I can't remember. But yeah, it was only the first few. But then you have to do that when you've got a new game. So hey, it is
Yeah.
what it is. But we should probably acknowledge Alan Bly's passing.
Yeah.
So recently I actually commented because I saw someone who is newer to the Heresy, and they were talking about some rules for something recently, and how, and someone else had said, oh yeah, it's all, they don't care as much anymore, and blah blah blah, and second edition, blah blah blah, and someone said, oh, is this because Anuj left? And it's like, hold on, Anuj was a vocal rules writer. He was happy to talk to people about stuff. He was happy to put his face forward to a certain point. Happy to be on screen. But he wasn't head rules writer. He was part of a team, and that team, as far as I'm aware, is still led by Neil Wiley, who worked under Alan from book 2, and I think he might even have his name in book 1 for like playtesting or something like that.
Mm.
But certainly he's on the credits of book 2.
Well,
Alan
interestingly, I've
Bly.
just jumped on one of the just to get the numbers right and the dates that they publish. I'm jumping on one of the wikis. So slight pinch of salt, but still, authors assigned. It's a team. It's a team that are developing books 1, 2, 3, and 4, of which Alan
Yeah,
Bly, John French, Andy Hoare, and Neil Wiley
yeah,
are all
yeah.
credited.
When you look at
So
that
it's a
now,
team of people.
but there's no doubt that Alan was the driving force. For those who don't know, Heresy was Alan's baby. I don't know the exact ins and outs, but essentially he went to GW and said, "I want to do this," and they were like, "Whoa." prove that the style of thing you want to do works. And he went,
Yeah.
okay, cool, and wrote Badab, which is 2 books that of campaign set in the Badab War. If you don't know about it, go and check it out. Phenomenally brilliant books that are still beloved by that generation of gamers, which then kind of helped convince GW that they could do Heresy and put the weight of what was needed behind it, helped by stepping up with Badab as well. And Alan was, he was that kind of person who did, 1.5 to 2 people's work, because he would do it on his own time, and he was, excellent at what he did, and sort of irreplaceable as a person in that respect. But I think he would be the first to say, like, hold on, you got Neil, you got Andy, you got X, all these people who contribute,
Yeah.
and it's not all his work.
And these are
Unfortunately,
experienced people as well. These aren't people who are
yeah,
cutting their
especially
teeth on this.
now.
These are people who are, I mean, as you say, Andy Hoare and John French, both of whom
Oh,
are contributing to the RPGs and
yeah,
doing
various
from
companies,
what I
yeah.
understand, pretty phenomenal work for Fantasy Flight and things, where they were turning around really quite incredible lore expanding stuff in very short timelines, and some pretty cool stuff coming out of the pressure of that. So highly experienced, highly passionate people working alongside it. Fantastic. It's always a team. Undeniable, though, the power of Alan sitting in those early weekenders and
Yeah,
hearing
the
his voice
Force,
come
wasn't
out
it?
as he described something. I mean, it was like, okay, this is captivating. I remember him and John
Yeah.
French talking about not Calth, about Farl and stuff. And I was like, I'm going to have to go and buy some breaches now. I will be
Mm.
starting an Imperial Fists and Iron Warriors. It was captivating, and that came
And
across in the writing as well.
yeah, and then so Alan died the night before Warhammer, no, yeah, Warhammer Fest,
Yes, it was. Yeah,
and that happened to be the weekend that they were showing off 40k, new 40k, when 40k had a complete change of system, and with Heresy being based on 40k, there was an issue there of what you do with Heresy, and Alan and crew had been working on, can we bring Heresy with this new rule set, and they decided that the time period given to them wasn't sufficient. So, stick in the same edition, see what happens, move forwards, have a look at 40k, see what it does. And down the line, who knows how we adjust, what we bring in, if we ignore it, what have you. Um, and and GW was changing a little bit then as well. But
yeah,
and anything after that point that is deemed to be by certain members of the community to be not up to standard is then put down to Alan's death, which is it's not even understandable. It's just a bit silly, really.
yeah.
There's a bit of ignorance, fair enough.
It's certainly not something I agree with.
No, and is very disrespectful to the authors that were the writers that worked on the books, and also completely blinkered, particularly around rule stuff. For those who played the game back with books 2, 3, there was some heinous stuff in those rules. Like, you saw armies with two typhons because they were utterly, utterly horrible. Knights were a big problem. And Alan knew some of this, but also didn't really care too much because the game wasn't necessarily written that way. And I think
Mm,
that's probably his biggest legacy, and of that team, is that even now, even though the game now is more defined, still has lots of little intricacies and everything else, the majority of events are still not non-competitive events, even if there are hard lists. And you mentioned Andy Hoare. His name's been mentioned right at the start writing these books. He's now head of specialist design, games design, or whatever it's called, specialist design,
studio.
specialist games
Yeah.
studio, whatever. Can't remember for the life of me. But he's head of that now, and I read the old world and I play the first 2 games of the old world, whatever, and I know that most people are going to be playing it as a tournament game, and I read it thinking it's too much like Heresy to be a tournament game. There's too many things here that can be really pushed too far. Like you can play it, don't get me wrong, the game can be played as a tournament game, but for me it doesn't look like that's where it will be best played. And then you look at Necromunda, and you look at, I mean, Andy talked about Necromunda so many times on various things, where they're delving into such old lore that Andy's now leading up all these different teams, and there's an influence into these games where they are Blood Bowl bringing players back or bringing a whole team into Blood Bowl that was mentioned back in like first edition Blood Bowl, and to the point where everyone's forgotten about it. Heresy, we're getting these pulls from deep lore from one like article ages ago. So for all that times have changed, people have moved on, people have passed away, what have you, the team we've got now are as respectful of the lore as they always were.
Yeah, and that shows. I mean, obviously, there was a conclusion. You're talking very specifically there about an event and the shockwaves that had over the finishing, if you like, of that series of books, the Black Books, and then it transitioning into the second edition of the game, if we call it that. And as you say, the care and attention, I think, is, even though the format in which it's delivered, care and there is quite clearly a high level of enthusiasm and passion that comes through in these books. I mean, even sort of the care in which the summaries of the Horus Heresy, the sort of overarching lore, I suppose, that's presented in the rulebook of second edition.
And I'm
Some
sure
considerable work has been put into that to
yeah,
make that comprehensive, rather than it being spread all over the place or having a particular spin. You think this is something that people care about,
and different people bring different things. Like I'm sure if Alan was still with us, like some aspects of this would look very different because that's the nature of the beast. But he's not with us, and and that's a loss for all of us. Just as gamers, let alone the people who knew him and were friendly with him, and his family and everything else. But I think what the team are doing now is pretty cool overall. I think
I agree.
I would like, there's a lot of stuff I would like to be different, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad or terrible or that's a point of view on a lot of that stuff. And I think I would like to see, in X amount of years' time, that we get a tightening up of everything that's going on. Because, as I say, like Heresy's always had some loose rules. There's been some Moritats when they first came out weren't supposed to blow up super heavies in one term, and that rule only got changed when it happened to some of the rules writers. So, these kind of things. So, yeah, that's cool. Okay, let's move on
So
from
events, because you'll have infinitely more experience of that. Because I think we're talking events. Do we mean gaming events? Because we've touched on.
Yeah,
I think we've already
we
touched on weekenders. We speak about weekenders all the time. Events, much like the one we attended recently, you've got experience of both attending and running those.
Well,
how did that evolve?
Well, I think just before we move on from Black Books, there was one other Black Library. There was one other event that happened that changed the way that Black Library books were talked about, and that was when they shifted to having hardbacks and a staggered release schedule, which was basically everyone telling them they had to do it, and they had two versions of paperback books because they said, when people were saying no, drop the small book paperback books, you want the big paperback books, they were like, no, people collect the small ones, we're still going to do them. And books went from being New York Times bestsellers to dropping off that because the buying stages were set far apart, and it wasn't until very recently that you could pick up every book on the same time. There were 3 months, 3 to 4 months to get
at least.
a long time.
It was at least that. Yes, it was.
And it also it didn't just hit sales, like in terms of like New York Times best selling is all about hitting those sales in one week. So it hit that, which then reduces visibility, etc. And people think the books are lesser because they're not New York Times bestsellers. But it also hampered discussion because I bought the hardbacks. My mate didn't. Can't talk about it with him for 5 months because I don't want to spoil that book. So yeah, that moving into, I will talk a little bit about Weekenders because the death of the Weekenders again. Not even the death of the Weekenders, the changing of the Weekenders from the making it the specialist games and Heresy Weekend, Necromancer and Heresy Weekender was like probably the first. That was like the one before that. That was the end of the Weekenders as we knew them, where you had this dedicated fan group for one event.
Yeah.
And it was, it was. I don't want to say elite. It was very restricted, very tight group of people. Because they knew how good that event was because they'd been and wanted to go back and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and the size of the event, it
Yeah.
didn't grow. It was
No,
kind of at capacity and stayed at that same capacity
and GW
for
had
some
grown,
time. Yes.
and we're leaving that, and that's understandable, but a massive loss. But anyway, so I just wanted to get that in. Actual
Yeah.
events. So I think there's been a few kind of stages. So right at the start, it was tournaments because that's what people knew how to run from 40k and things like that.
Yeah,
So
that
right
was
at
the
the
only
start,
events I was really aware of. Growing up playing war games, there
I
were
mean,
people at the club I would go to that were playing specifically 40k to
sure.
train to go to tournaments. That
Again,
was it.
again, there were, the first expedition. The guys were playing Heresy before Heresy was even made. They were spending 20 odd quid a model
Yeah,
to buy 3 models to cut them up, metal models and all that. It didn't take long for narrative to, because there were narrative events, but there were, my first event was essentially a tournament with a narrative structure around it. Uh, but the second one was narrative, and from then on, narrative events became the thing. There were
and when
not
was
that
that?
many.
What sort of era
Oh,
are we
I
there?
cannot remember.
2010s. I mean,
2010 probably. Yeah,
hmm,
I would have thought so.
yeah.
Uh,
So it's pre there being a rule system.
oh no, it wouldn't have been then, would it? Oh shoot, the rule's only 12 years old, so it'd be, yeah, probably 10 years, probably 2014, 2015.
Okay, right.
Yeah,
So it's round
sorry,
about the
get my
same
years
time.
muddled up.
Round about the same time you started the podcast.
Yeah, it would have been just after that.
Right.
Yeah, so 10 years ago would be 2014. So yeah, again, probably. I might have run the first one fairly soon. I can't remember. Anyway, yeah, a couple of years in would have been really 2 to 3 years in. It really settled down, and you
Yeah.
had in the UK anyway, because America took off a bit slower. We had Edge of Empire were running regular events. I was doing one. Sorry, Spartans were doing one. King Fluff was around doing his events, which were very narrative. Doing like 1 day events, that kind of like big battle events, Siege of Terror, that kind of stuff quite early on. I'm trying to remember where else there were, but there were these pockets doing events, and people would travel a long way to go to them
Mm, mm,
because that's what you had to do to go to Heresy events. There were a few. I ran big ones, and even, I mean, my first event was 40 odd players, my second one was 60 odd. By the time we got to London Grand Tournament at the infamous LGT at the Olympic Stadium, which came up on my Facebook memories the other day. It was just an interesting one. Let me see if I can find the year for that. Yeah, by the time I think we sold uh, 92 tickets, but didn't get 92 players for reasons. So London Heresy, because I'd run the London Heresy with them before. I won't find it either. I can't. No, can't remember. Probably 7 years ago, something like that. For 7 or 8 years ago, for 7 probably. Yeah, 92 players for a single event. The Aussies, to be fair, had a really strong narrative group going at that point, and still do. But yeah, I don't. There's not really any Aussie podcasts to listen to. So they were going really strong. We had these like pockets around that were doing really well. And then you had people come in, and I remember when I did my first full narrative event, I'd been looking around other people's packs and I started to think, right, okay, let's do things a bit differently. Let's pick some alternative missions. Let's throw some extra rules in. Let's do this. And then right at the top of it, put, because I'd played some narrative events for other game systems, or certainly narrative game days. I was like, right at the top, we're going to put in a disclaimer here. If you want completely fair games, like war's not fair. The terrain, the enemy, the ruinous powers could all affect you. If you want a completely fair game, don't come. Like, this is not that event. And that first paragraph got stolen quite a lot. Sometimes it got rewritten. A lot of the times it didn't. And all of a sudden it was in every kind of events pack, kind of as a tone setter for we can do things. And for a while there were some really kind of crazy events. And then there was a lot of cool ones. And then after it kind of settled into this pattern of a type of event. And then I would say Jungles of a Car Pete Dunn. That event, it might be the one. It might be the one before that one he did. I don't know if that was the first one, where he upped the game. Like, he had a very tight Zone Mortalis event, which had a computer, a film introducing each mission.
Wow.
And one group had to go out, and every table was reset up to play a specific mission that told the story of whatever, and he moved that around and really stepped up the level. And now with technology and everything the way it is, you can go to events. When I went up to Stratford, and again there was a video before every game with a narrative over the top of it. There's like myriad different ways of people choosing who they play or where they play and how they play and all that kind of stuff. But the one thing that has happened lately is events have got smaller, because there's more people running them, more places. It's easier to run a smaller event, needs less room, needs less terrain, which is a big thing, which is why I've always run mine at Element, Firestorm, and then alongside another event like London GT and Blood and Glory. And I must have done like 3 events one year: Blood and Glory, LGT, and my own, I would have thought. Which is cool, but takes some work. But yeah, there's a lot of 20, 30 player events now, and they're selling out to locals or to the people who came to the one before. So one thing I do see now is less travel unless it's for specific events. Because people are like, why am I going to travel 4.5 hours when I can travel 1 hour? It's like, well, because you live in the southeast of England, you don't have much choice. It's one of them. But how often, this happened with Warhammer Fantasy as well. We went from like a handful of big events to, at one point in 8th, there were 60 plus player events happening in the UK on one weekend. This was at a time when 40k events were big if they were 40 or 45. Like the Brighton GT was like 40 odd players, and I was travelling to Salford to playing a 120 player Warhammer Fantasy Battle event, that kind of thing. But yeah,
so with the growth of events like that, I mean, you are, as you say, it's a commitment traveling a long distance to something. If you've got the choice, you're like, I'm only going to be able to attend, say, 1, 2, 3 events max in a year. Are you going to commit to that level of time?
And unfortunately, like, I think there's space there for a big event, and you see it with the doubles where people go, we can fit more players in. It's like, yeah, absolutely, and doubles is a different beast anyway. But there was something awesome about being at Blood and Glory and having 60 players all there to play one game and hanging out there. And this is where, when we look at, so my first Adepticon might have been the first time they had Heresy, and I didn't know anyone, and just had a look in. It was cool. You go there now, and the next one, they've got so much more room in the next Adepticon. So Heresy's expanding. It's going to be I don't know how many people were there last year, all staying in that area. A lot of them are staying spending the whole evening in the same area around the same tables, talking or what have you. You just don't get that with a
That's
20-player
cool.
event. And also,
No,
when you have these localized events which local people go to, your community doesn't expand beyond that
I
local.
think that's the thing. And also, if you attend one of those, it makes you even less likely to travel to it
Yeah.
because you're going to be breaking into someone else's group, if you like.
Well,
You're turning up, and that could be work, but it's a risk.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I think now that does happen, but it happens for specific events that have developed a
Mm,
notoriety for that. So, or that are run by a podcast.
mm,
Yeah, it's
mm,
always a help. I got 92 players signing up for London Heresy in part because of the podcast and because people know my other events have been, enjoyable at least. You look at London Heresy now, and um, 30 players. I think last one I looked at. I don't know. Maybe a couple of years ago, whatever it was. Uh, I think some of that's pack. I don't think it's ever been a good pack afterwards after I've run it, but I also think there's other things that tie into it as well. I mean, partly because in the heresy community, LGT is a trashed name as well. It's a
mm,
reputation that's hard to lose. But you look at Malmo and
yeah.
places like that, people will travel to, and groups again. It is kind of it's almost more of a friendship group with travel, but you will get people traveling. I mean, I'll still go up to Edge of Empire if they put on another event. I'll try and get up there, and I'm pretty sure I'll see similar faces that will do that again. But it's good to run into a few of the Scottish guys, a few of the Northern guys, because all the time you've got these small events that you're only going to the small ones. You're only ever like swimming in the same pool, and it is a bit of a shame.
Mm.
But I mean, we
Even though
talked.
they become more accessible, and so you potentially go into more events, but they're a
They
different
become
type of event.
accessible for you. They don't become accessible for the new person
Yeah,
coming in, which is another, like, everything's got its positives and negatives, right?
yeah.
Things become clicky when
Mm,
they get that small. But also, it's just, variety is the spice of life. This is why I don't like 40k and Age of Sigmar tournaments much now, because it's the same event every time. They just wait for GW to
Well, it's
release a
even
new
even
army or the new points.
hearing you say and reflect on events that were getting quite wacky, or that were you knew full well that you weren't going into a fair game. That sounds awesome. I'd be all over that. And you're like,
It's
yeah, that sounds good. I'd sign up to that. Sign up to
it
something that you
is
know is going to just go a bit mad. Like, you are up against it. You're probably going to lose, or whatever. Or who knows what's going to happen. It might be you just get completely trounced, but look what fun you can have along the way. These weird things
unfortunate.
happen, rather than, no, this is this type of game, and it's fairly similar to the types of game you've been playing before, because you're playing the game like a mechanic. You think, well, yeah, okay, that's
It's a
the
hard
tournament
it's a h-
style, which is
it's a
a
hard
different kind of
balance to
thing.
get right because you
Oh,
quickly
hugely, yeah,
find, like, when you can launch um, you know interspace ballistic missiles from one table to another table and you destroy someone's Spartan before they get to move it, right?
yeah,
They get annoyed, but also it's narrative. Like,
yeah.
it's hard to get people to buy in. Like, I actually think, weirdly, the one place I see really, really like concentrated narrative gaming to a high level is actually Age of Sigmar. There's a group of neos, they call themselves, narrative event organizers, that have forums that work on things. They ran 4 events at Adepticon, I think, of these narrative games, and some of them don't necessarily have full-on win conditions. They have, oh, I've killed your war machine crew and I'm standing by it. Can I attempt to fire your war machine? Yeah, cool. Let's work out some way of making that work. That it might not work properly. Uh, you try to do that in the heresy scene, like at a regular event. I think you'd struggle. You'd
Mm.
People need to be fully involved, and I don't think they're fully there. But you can throw effects out there. You can have, um, we do see rules that affect tables and stuff, but that affect everyone on different tables. But you can certainly pick out armies that are doing well. Um, or negatively and say, okay, cool, something specific. You've got a new shipment of weapons, and all of your lasguns are hotshot lasguns now. That kind of thing can be done. Again, it's always a tricky balance to get right. Like, never ever use the ambush scenario. It's just one person has fun, the other one gets trounced. I just tend to avoid it. I've never had it. I've never seen it work properly at an event. Hey, but there are things you can do. So, yeah, it's been a long journey. I wonder if we'll have a swing back to some more bigger events.
Particularly after, touching on our conversation we had a couple of shows ago about the setting. Heresy is a setting for games, so that you end up with at least several different scales of game. You could have epic system games, and we've had Titanicus for a long time. Mixing that up and having events that cover perhaps those, and I know
A lot
there's
of
people
work.
talking about doing that. A huge amount of work to make that work, but it introduces another type of event. So
Yeah,
we could see some very interesting things that weren't as viable, weren't as
yeah.
possible,
To be fair,
weren't as likely
actually,
to happen 10 years ago.
the one place that do quite large events, Greetings from the Warp.
Yeah,
But I would say there's a large contingency of players who just regularly go to Greetings events. I mean, they're lucky for them; they're fairly central in the country. I say fairly central because obviously they're a lot further down than they are up. But when you've got to
yeah.
drive around London, uh, when it probably takes as long to get there from Scotland as it does from here. Certainly, no, not quite
But
that
you're
bad. But
probably drawing on a larger portion of the population.
yeah, oh yeah,
Alternatively,
Element was the one. People were coming down from middle of Scotland quicker than I could get there, which was always a bit
yeah.
annoying. But hey, it is what it is. Let's move it on. Models, highs and lows. The Primarchs were the key thing. Like when
They
they
are.
announced
It's
Heresy.
undeniable, wasn't it? That as soon as
Mm,
you know the heresy is coming, the Primarchs were going to be the big percussive beat that was going to run through the whole thing,
yeah,
and still are.
but I think we've talked a lot about Primarchs. I don't necessarily think there's been
No,
better. People will still say the Primarch I think is the worst. People will still say it's my favourite, which is good.
yeah,
Again, variety is what you want. They've been fantastic. The new going into a second set of 18 is a massive, really interesting position to be
yeah,
in.
completely.
Whether we get, I'm sure we will get Malcador at some point. Still think we'll get the Emperor at some point. I think outside of that, so. Initially, we started getting these heresy models. That was the first thing we get these heresy models, but that was kind of sort of expected in a lot of circles because of bad up. For me, I think the real first big woe was Mechanicum. They
You
were,
said this. You said that had a
yeah,
real impact on you, and that seeing the Thanataf the first time.
just everyone. I mean, yeah, it was the Thanatar for me, but the Alax and stuff had been out. It was just such a different look. We're talking at a time when before 40k had started to expand as well. Like the
Yeah,
newest army in 40k was Tau. Like the Vespid
yeah.
might have been the newest thing. Yeah, you look at it now and there's cool Votan, and cool this aspect of this and this, what have you. Um,
Well, various ranges are quite mature now. I mean, I remember it being a
mm,
massive deal when 40k started looking at Mechanicus as they are.
yeah,
That
yeah,
was
exactly.
a big deal. The Adeptus Mechanicus being introduced into that, it's like, whoa, okay. And as you say, picking up other ranges and having ranges be refreshed, that was a big deal. But that wasn't happening. It was a
No,
pretty static set, like double down on the ones that were already there. So for Forge World to go and look at other factions was quite a big deal. And it was the first time we started to see Mechanicum / Mechanicus type things. I agree that was significant. I do remember being pretty blown away by Cataphractii Terminators when they
yeah,
were revealed on that opening because it was so evocative of the Sabretooth
mm,
card game.
Yeah, I think
And
there's an
seeing that
aspect of
artwork that was there, that was a big deal. That was, I remember being like, "Whoa, okay, here we go. This has really got some opportunity to do some different direction for Space Marines." I remember being
yeah,
excited by that. And then same when they started doing bizarre things like with Possessed, for example, or the Galval back as they were.
back. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think so. You can look at yeah. We won't get too in the weeds with those kind of like looking at single models.
no, no.
I think you can look at the range of dreadnoughts that they brought out
Mm,
because people love dreadnoughts, and like kind of like the steps forward they've done with those dreadnoughts, and then yeah, the Legion of specific troops. Obviously, some hits and some
yeah,
misses as usual, and characters as well. Like some fine examples of Space Marines, but really good examples of Space Marines. But fundamentally, most of them are just Space Marines in some
mm,
cool armor, some cool whatever. I think the Dreadnoughts stand out a little bit more because they, again, like we were used to box noughts. There's the Contemptor, like wow, this sleek thing,
yeah,
and then Deredeo and Leviathan uh, and then so that was pretty awesome. And then I think it's the big stuff, the Glaive, the
yeah,
Mastodon, which for me was just phenomenal. And the funkier, quirkier stuff that was slightly, yeah, it's obviously still Space Marine, but whoa, the Xiphon, like
yeah,
it, because it those things kind of that, yeah, again they're in the Space Marine family, but they're definitely not 40k.
yeah, yeah. Agreed. And referencing some of the early epic stuff to have it. I mean, termites, for example. I remember that.
Yeah,
That was exciting seeing stuff like that. I still think they're cool because they referenced something that was very cool and very epic focused for me, and that was
sure,
a sort of a particular period. And they're like, "Oh, cool! You're dredging that up, but realizing it with much
but
greater design scope." And that's
but
something that Heresy I think could do.
I think the biggest thing with models was Betrayal at Calth. So box set
Yeah,
containing plastic models, plastic Contemptor, plastic Terminators. Everything so far had been resin. It was
yeah, it
expensive. It was,
was
more
niche.
fiddly than
Yeah,
plastic is, and a pain really compared to plastic.
yeah,
Although so obviously some people have different opinions on that, but plastic goes together so easily, etc., etc. And it made Heresy affordable.
yeah,
Not completely affordable, but much more affordable. You could get a basic force. You could look at a Pride of the Legion um, force relatively uh,
yeah.
inexpensively, relative doing some heavy lifting on that one, and that brought in a wave of people into the game. They were suddenly like, "Oh yeah, I can do that," and because that was November 2015 that came out and had this massive impact. Then what happened was, let me just try and get the right date on it. Um, then what happened was we had the burning of Prospero, which was October 2016. It wasn't 1 year later. So people have got their plastics, they painted them up. All of a sudden, we drop in some custodians again. First place we saw custodes.
I remember
Was it
when
first?
rumors started circulating about that before images leaked,
4 or 5
and the
months.
rumors, yeah, image rumors going out. I was like, no way.
Yeah.
This is
Well, so did
pure
I.
wish listing. There is no way they will do all of that in the one box, and then it happened.
But
Okay.
because someone left them in a display
Oh yeah.
cabinet.
Well,
Uh,
then it leaked, didn't it? Yeah.
Accessible. Well, no, that was well before they were put in a display cabinet. Well before I was told this rumor and disbelieved it like months beforehand.
Right.
But yeah, what you get in that? Yeah, 30 Mark
Three.
threes, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, 5 Tartarus, Custodian Guard, Sisters of Silence. Sisters of Silence as a playable force. Like wow,
Yeah. Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
Um, but that also coincided with a period of 40k where players were getting fed up.
Yeah.
So you had a second release that's all plastic with some amazing models and some funky, like not seen before stuff, alongside a game system that was kind of losing a lot of momentum, and we had an even bigger rush in to the game, which
Mm.
had its ups and downs. You had people coming in with a very different mindset, some of them, and some of them adjusting, and some of them not adjusting to because you have to adjust when the environment's different. Like
Mm. Mm.
because and at this point, I was very much saying, look, someone run a tournament, let people who want to play that do it, please, because then people will go to that tournament and won't go to a narrative event with their extreme custodies list, that kind of thing. A lot of them kind of went back to 40k once it changed, but some stayed. But all of a sudden, again, now you've got 2 marks of armor, 2 types of terminators, some custodians, some sisters of silence. Like it was a big,
Mm.
big change.
It was. It was a real shift into it. But yeah, because resin is surprising how it will put people off. Just from a cost point of view is obvious, but equally just from the commitment in modelling,
Mm.
you wouldn't get the mass adoption. A hell of a lot easier than people spending, as you say, 20 quid buying 5 kits just to build a single model to have accurate armor marks. And that's before you talk about metal as well. So
Yeah,
obviously resin's easier than that, dedicated kit's easier than that. But the next step being plastic meant you've got a much wider adoption. People who are far more tempted, who might have been curious before, but would have been prevented from getting involved,
yeah.
now could.
So I remember the first London Heresy I ran, which was the second London GT, I believe, and someone had bought a custodies list, and I had to throw so many different rules at them because they were playing it hard. They were doing all the wound shenanigans, all this, and that was the event where we knew new edition of 40k was coming,
Mm.
and they actually put a Heresy game on the live stream covering the 40k event because Rob Symes at the time was like, why are we even bothering? Like, no one really cares. Like,
Yeah.
and also like a few of the top armies couldn't be shown on the stream because they weren't GW models. Um, so we got a little bit of time in the sun. Yeah, but it brought a lot of people in who then struggled on buying resin models and everything else. And then second edition was 2022, so we're talking 6 years. And
Yeah.
for the first few, it was fine, and then people started to get a bit itchy. There was big quietness around it pre-COVID, and then COVID hit and made it even worse. But we were on this show. We were talking a year and a bit before this came out. We literally had a show about like reasons to be positive about like something's happening.
Yeah.
Like it's not dead. Like we're talking about it. And then the leaks and what have you. And then, I mean, look at what plastic's done for the game now. Like how many people have armies?
Yeah. Yeah.
Might not necessarily play regularly. It doesn't matter. They got armies.
And even more so because there would have been a period where it was a thought in my own mind of, oh, that's cool. I'm going to build an army that I can use in both game systems. I'm going to build
Yeah,
models where at least a chunk of it can be used interchangeably between the two. I don't care. I don't need it to be the super purist. Oh, that's a bit of a condescending term, but you know what I mean. I don't need this to be two completely different eras. That's not the play I want to do. I wanted to have
mm,
it so it could be both. The that I don't think is something you necessarily do. There are certain things now that they are quite separate. You don't get that crossover, and as it perhaps quite did. There are quite dedicated armies. No, this is my 30k army. This is my 40k army.
I should say actually there was one in between those two books, and that was the release of the Demons,
Mm,
which
mm,
again allowed full-on plastic because you could
yeah,
utilize any other stuff. So that opened it again before this. But yeah, as
I
you
mean
say,
that's the archetype of a bit of having an army you could
yeah,
use in multiple. In that you could use in 3 games. Just you could have used that, which still can. You could use it in fantasy in 40k and heresy. It opens up a lot of options, which
for
was
sure.
which was quite cool. And as you said, that particularly is a direct result of the models going a particular way, a decision over the technology used to make and the materials used to make those models
Yeah, and
directly impacted that, and has again with Heresy 2.0.
the story is that it was the Kratos that led to that. That Tony for well, let's just leave Tony alone. But seeing the Kratos and deciding it really needed to be plastic and going on from that, and yeah, the story could be wrong, but it's what I've heard. And then going, well, if that's plastic, then we have to start looking at maybe what else we can do and how far can we push it. And Bob's your uncle, here we are.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, it's something that Jordan Sorcery focuses on, isn't it? Where he says about he's
Yeah, it
really
would be
interested in
really
how the
cool actually.
business. Yeah, I'd love him to do that as a deep dive because he really does
It
focus on
might be
how
a
does
bit
the business
too
develop
recent.
this.
Lots of those
Yeah,
people still in the
so yeah,
company.
it's something they can't discuss, but it is fascinating, and it's a demonstration of how the business development affects the game development because of course it's kind of obvious, but seeing it all laid out in that way is fascinating. Like you say, we're not going to know that, I'd imagine, for some
No,
time, if ever.
and and the changes to, like, obviously, so Anuj had it as Heresy Project 2021. So like, how long, like, in the build up to that was that all
Yeah,
happening? How far back are we? All that kind of thing makes you wonder what they've got up their sleeves, and the game, like the progression of the lore, and well, we'll wait for the next book to kind of come out to see what that's all about. But you can see the threads are there. Like, essentially, the game is not much different over the course of the last 12 years. It's taken what a winding path, and it's lost an element of its kind of prestige because it's not resin, because the black books aren't leather, faux leather bound, and uh, but also they're not hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pounds an army. It's
yeah,
just hundreds.
yeah,
Like, but it's much more accessible, much more maintainable for people,
yeah,
um, and and we're seeing progression over those things as well. Um, and I suppose we just have to see where it takes us.
yeah, yeah.
And the company's changed, as you say. The company's changed a lot in that, like, especially games design, um, or SDS, specialist design. I don't know why I can't remember it tonight. Anyway, specialist
Specialist
um,
Design Studio, I believe, is what
design
it was.
studio. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I thought
It
it's
was
sometimes
because
called that.
again, it's confusing that sometimes it's Specialist Games Studio because
Yeah,
Specialist Games was a thing,
yeah,
was a very specific brand that they had for a while with Jervis Johnson. I'm fairly
yeah.
certain it's the Specialist Design Studio has
Yes,
become
yeah. That's
kind of
it.
what
Probably
Forge
it.
World was. But
So
yeah,
you've got, yeah, but then within that now, like, and that for a while was, oh, there's a Blood Bowl team, and there's a Heresy team, and there's a Lord of the Rings team, um,
yeah,
and then 40k will take the rules for this, and now that's all, like, there's so many different games, and now Heresy is Titanicus and Legions Imperialis
mm,
and this and any AI rules that get written as well. So
mm,
Heresy, like Age of Darkness, has become a team within that as well. So constantly changing. Um, and you look back at, like, the kind of the team that was there, and it's smaller, in a way, but now they're sharing resources. So it's like it's all very different, but still with people like Neil, Andy, following through. I know that John had helped with some other bits later on as well. And then you look at Sam Egan, and
mm,
you know who's still there doing Primarchs. Obviously, people like Edgar have moved on, and they haven't even mentioned the Solar Auxilia, and
mm,
the use of 3D printing, like,
yeah.
really coming to the
Well,
fore
and
with
3D
them.
sculpting, in fact.
3D
I
sculpt.
mean, that being a whole
Well,
discussion. Yeah,
yeah, well, 3D sculpting and 3D printing, to utilize all those technologies when people, this is, back however many years when we are 3D printing is going to kill GW. It's like, well, still waiting for that to happen. and now say 3D sculpted Primarchs, meaning they can be done that much quicker, and it's crazy from where we were.
Yeah, which is
Really
why
is.
it was such a good suggestion.
Yeah, the other thing
To
is as
have this
well.
sort of review, sort of like looking back over that period, because it covers so many different threads.
So when I started, obviously, I was the first proper. Although there was one, I think it was called the 30K. I don't know what it's called now. There was one episode of one podcast where a guy who obviously wasn't very comfortable behind the mic tried to do something. So I don't count that as a podcast. Ours was the first dedicated Heresy podcast, and then 6 months later was Eye of Horus, and then a few months after that was Edge of Empire, I think. And there's been swings when at one point, like, there was this compulsion almost that everyone had to listen to all the Heresy content because there were like 7 podcasts. And now, like, there's a huge range of podcasts to listen to. There's dedicated, SN Battle Reports have literally just
Mm-hmm.
said, we're dropping 40K, we're dedicating ourselves to 30K. We get much more interaction. It's a much smaller pond, and there are many fewer fish swimming in it. So, particularly with, I think, YouTube content for Heresy is a place where Heresy coverage could improve greatly, and in terms of podcasts and gaming. And there are some people doing some good things, but I think we're well behind most other
Mm-hmm.
game systems on YouTube. And GW's approach to all that has changed as well. And we're recording this section after the previous section. We've just had the Blood Angels unit,
Mm. Sanguinary
um,
Guard.
Sanguinary Guard. Yeah, no, I was getting there. Shown off, painted by Henry, showing off how you paint it and giving the rules to Pardo at SN as well. And it's like,
Yeah.
cool. And we've now got, even the Heresy launch being invited up there, and all that kind of aspect is just a world away from where we were. And of course, times have changed in 10 years as well.
Mm.
And I just want to say I'm extremely thankful to listeners. There'll be a handful of listeners here who've been with me 10 years pretty much. And over various ups and downs and various co-hosts and things like that. But I try and go to Adepticon now as often as possible. Friends in America, and some of this has come from doing after Eleanor as well. But going out to Australia, obviously we had Stu out there, mutual friend, but going to a Heresy event there and talking to people
Mm.
who, I know of, they know of me. We haven't necessarily directly communicated, but doing that kind of thing, going around the country, being able to run events, having people, interact and having people ask me for help with setting up podcasts, and I can't do much technically, but or how to run events and all that, and it's been awesome, to be fair.
Mm.
Uh,
Yeah, I mean, it is the setting that, and the game and the setting, everything that does seem to have this longevity of getting people excited. I mean, people sort of return to, when people say they're returning to Games Workshop or 40K or something. Yeah, kind of, but it does seem to have this real thing that people speak warmly and positively about consistently over such a long period of time, where rather than some of the others, which can be a bit of a love hate type of thing, or something where it waxes and wanes. With Heresy, it's still the thing that people speak of most fondly, over that period where it has existed and sort of solidified into something more significant rather than
yeah,
more niche. And I think that long may that continue, because I think it's grown at a pace. It's sort of that slow, things that grow slowly are typically stronger rather than sort of having a flash
yeah,
and then
it'll
not doing
be
something else. I hope
interesting.
it is that. I hope it continues like that.
It'll be interesting to move forwards without a book
Mm.
series driving it in the
Mm.
same way. Uh, Heresy also has to be careful that it doesn't get, as a community, we don't get into this Heresy's best and all other game systems can
Yeah.
suck it, because, frankly, for all the brilliant Heresy content in terms of modelling and painting I've seen as good in all other game systems. Obviously at 40k and other tournaments that might drop off to a point, but that's sort of the nature of the beast. It's not necessarily kind of a reflection on the game as a whole. But yeah, so trying to maintain that welcoming atmosphere is always a little bit of a just got to be mindful of it. But the background's so cool, the models are so cool. The community is generally good. Most communities are, to be fair. Let's be honest about that. Yeah, and it's so much easier now. Whether it's buying the models, whether it's the access to painting them, whether it's finding events, all of that is a lot easier than it used to be. And of course, there's going to be Fred out there who's got no one near him who plays, and that sucks. I don't have that many people near me that I can play regularly, but I'm doing okay. But I'm not in a metropolis where I can walk 10 yards down the road and find a gaming centre and 70 people like some people do. So, but it's good. It's cool. Yeah, I think we'll probably leave it there because we waffled on.
Yeah, I think if we risk repeating ourselves. I think over there, or even touching on some of the themes that we talked about recently.
I'm sure.
I'm really grateful for Eamon for writing in that email note suggestion. It really captured my mind and made me think on those particular highlights and moments.
And there's
far more so than any lowlights.
Yeah, and there's more stuff in that email as well. We'll probably come back to. What I will do is I'll put the call out here. So, we've talked for quite a while about this. What have we missed? What specifically for you over the last 12, 13 years, whatever it is, 10 years of the show, if you will? I haven't actually talked too much about the show because, frankly, I mean, I've met Neil Hollis has won a painting sword because of the show. That kind of thing has happened. Me and Angel Heraldez basically even levels for showing off models.
Definitely.
That kind of thing.
You're up there, aren't you? Yeah.
Absolutely. Written some articles for GW, which is pretty awesome. But in all seriousness, like I'm not going to bang on about how good the show is. Sometimes it's been pretty bad back in the day. But yeah, let us know kind of the things we missed out on, or because of the nature of how everything, it will be specific to individuals. Let us know yours, and maybe we can have actually feed back to us, and we can maybe have a little show topic on people's responses. That would be really cool to do. Maybe we'll give it an episode because the next one hopefully will come out not too long after this one.
Lovely.
But yeah, I think we're there.
Good reflection. I think I was going to enjoyed that.
Awesome. Okay, wonderful stuff, Howard.
Good to talk to you, bud. Speak to you soon.
Cheers. No, diamond. Let's call it there. Congratulations, you made it to the end of another episode of the Imperial Truth. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for however long you've listened, whether it's been 10 years, whether it's been 10 days. You are all welcome and you are all appreciated. And I just, this show would go on with fewer listeners, but obviously it all helps stroke the ego a little bit and make it feel like it's worth doing. So yeah, a big thank you to all you that listen to the show, whether I've talked to you or not. Obviously, as stated a little bit earlier, made a few friends through the show and things like that. But there are people who've bought shirts who've not commented; they've just gone and bought them or used the links for sponsors or mentioned the show to friends or that kind of thing. That has really kind of pushes and encourages me as a podcaster. And as I say, I haven't always interacted with those people directly, but just as I say, thank you very much. We talked about feeding back about the last 10, 12, 13 years of Heresy in general for the show as well. If you think there's a good topic out there that isn't being covered or might want mine and Howard's viewpoints or any questions you've got, confusions, anything like that, please feel free to email Greg at theimperialtruth.com. As I say, show ideas, questions, topics, what you want to hear more of, what you want to hear less of. It's all good. It's all good. Send it on over and we'll have a look through. You can also get the show on Facebook. All the links for these are in the show notes, and I'll try and get a link tree sorted in a better place as well. I'll put that on the list of things to do that has been rather neglected of late. But you've got, so that's Facebook, you've got Instagram at Child of Fang, you've got Twitter at Imperial_Truth, and I'm at Child of Fang on there as well. If you feel like you want to say thank you a little bit more than just listening or saying thank you or sharing the podcast, we do have a Patreon. It is purely a tip jar. If you feel like you want to put in anything, then from 99 cents, I think it is, onwards, then that is greatly appreciated. Absolutely no pressure on people to do that at all. If you're buying toys and you want to help the show, Element Games, you can use our link there, and that gives the show a little bit of a kickback. And we also have our codes on there as well, so you get double crystals, we get some crystals. So yeah, it's a small thing, but it can add up, that is for sure. Still looking at a US, even an Australian shop to link with like that. I know through this show and through After Eleanor, our topics have led to people going out and buying things, so it can work, and we do get some engagement on the affiliate link. That's the word for Element Games. So again, thank you for anyone who's done that. As I say, feel free to contact us about any of those things or anything else, even if there's something else you want to contact us at, feel free. This is proper rambly, partly because I'm shattered on a Friday night trying to get this out a little bit later than I wanted to. But hey, that is the Imperial Truth, right? So yeah, we're 10 years down and we're 18 shows from 200. So another year and a bit, maybe. You never know, because there might be extra shows in there. Touch wood. Hopefully, no extended stays in hospital to delay things, but hopefully, we'll get there a little bit quicker than the next 18 months. I think that's about all there is for now. We might have some news about an event coming up. I'm not going to say too much yet because there's still a lot of stuff up in the air to sort out. So, yeah, keep an eye out for that one. It won't be anytime soon anyway. The event's a long way off if it happens. But just a little heads up for you all there. Anyway, I'm going to leave that there. You have been listening to The Imperial Truth.